Is Jim? Oh, Jim is here. Okay. I was thinking, where's Jim? This table's so big, I can't see. Exciting. All right.
It has a couple big groups.
All right. Yes. Maybe I'll do that.
Oh yeah, then you can see
So
the
you can actually see.
crowd.
Yes. All right. Welcome everyone to the Planning Commission dinner work session. So, I'd like to have this opportunity each year to get together with the Planning Commission and check in with you, have a dialogue across the table about what's going on. And imagine tonight, we don't have a set agenda, so we'll just kind of free flow of ideas, and imagine we'll spend a good bit of time talking about the Northwest area study. So you have some items you want to kick off with, Jim?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I would kick it to any of my fellow commissioners. I think we're coming up on, we need to develop our work plan at our next meeting. So we'd love to hear from the board. If you all have some things on your minds that you'd like us to focus on, we'd be happy to take those up. And, other than that, I think we're all just happy to get together with you guys. It's kind of nice to do this informally and
Yes.
see what's on everybody's minds.
It's been a busier past year or two, so it's good to have the activity. You all have been doing good work too, so appreciate the work that you all have been doing, kind of spearheading some new ideas.
Well, thanks. You've got a good commission. We're pretty lucky to serve with these folks.
Yes. Okay, others want to jump in with?
I think one of the things we're looking for, which was on your agenda a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago, is the contract with Clarion to perform services related to the Northwest Sub-Area Plan. And I know you all had some concerns about maybe what that scope should be. I think we would love some direction related to what that scope should be and what some possible outcomes, not planning related outcomes, but I think kind of deliverables or outcomes related from that process. I think that would probably be, speaking for the rest of my commissioners, probably one of our highest priority requests tonight, to get some direction on that.
Sandy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I want to comment on. And I'm sure I have food all over my face and my teeth, but so do you, so we're all in the same boat. So I wanted to make sure you're not discouraged by the fact that the board had questions and maybe concerns about the scope. That was not the intent. I think the level of work that you've done on it's terrific. I think the project's very necessary. My concern is how the project was outlined. I've spent about 20 years in strategic marketing, and there are a couple ways to go about a project of that sort. One is to go into community meetings with no idea about what you yourself envision for anything. The problem with that is you're catching the people sort of cold at those meetings. And they may or may not have given it much thought. Their ideas may be on point or not, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, the quality of your output is never as good as when the educated people in the room first have a discussion, because you know a lot more about this. We know a lot more about what our intent is, or we're further down the pike, and then go back to the community with some specific ideas to see if they warm to them or not. And once you have them sort of invigorated, then you open it up for their input. But to catch them just cold, to me, rarely yields good results. So when I saw the way that was outlined, it's like have this community meeting and that community meeting and the other community meeting. It's all fine and dandy, but that isn't, to me, how it should start. It should start with you guys and us thinking about this more seriously, and because we all have an idea of where we might like to take this. And I don't think we're going to predetermine the results. That's not the goal. But the goal is a starting point that will yield the best results. So anyway, that's why I did not like the way the Clarion proposal was put forth on paper. Did you get the difference?
Yeah, I just had a question, follow-up question. Sandy says you're concerned more with the work that's already been done by Clarion or what they were thinking about?
No, I like Clarion. I think Clarion is, I really think Darcy's great. And I like what they did so far. What I didn't like about it, frankly, is when you're gathering opinions, you've got to do it right. Otherwise, you have the same person attending 3 meetings, voting 3 times. You've got board members possibly weighting opinion at those. You've got planning commissioners weighting opinions at those, and there's this tension because we're all residents. But on the other hand, we're trying to see perhaps how the rest of the community feels, and not just hearing a reflection of how we feel, right? So how you go about collecting this data matters, and I think they fell short there. But I think the rest of it I liked, and so I have no problem with Clarion. I have no problem with Darcy's leadership at all. It's just where do we start? And so anyway, that's what I was trying to articulate out there. I think it may have come across as discouraging to some people. That was not the intent. The intent is to go full steam ahead. As a matter of fact, I think it's my #1 priority for 2018.
Hopefully to put you maybe at ease, I would argue, I think on the flip side, I added up the time I think the Planning Commission has spent in 2017. We met for over 20 hours this year, not on applications, so work plan specific. So I think, you know, we put in a substantial amount of time this year. And I also would trust Clarion as a highly reputable firm to understand, I think, the appropriate planning process that should have to happen. So whether or not the scope was maybe incorrectly or inappropriately drafted in some manner, I don't have any concerns. I think from a planning commission perspective, as well as from a Clarion perspective, that even if there was some concerns on that, I don't have any concerns that we wouldn't get a good result with the scope we have.
Okay, Bob,
So,
and then Kevin.
Where I got discouraged was that I've watched this board spend hours on agenda items. And my discouragement was that we sat there and there was a couple of comments made about the way the presentation was laid out, and then the agenda item was closed and tabled. That blew me away, frankly. And I don't know what it is that prompts the board to spend 1.5, 2+ hours on an agenda item, way over budget what you had on it, and what causes you to shut it down. I feel like this could have been resolved that night just with some additional conversation, but it didn't seem like anybody wanted to have it, and it just blew me away. Now we're another month behind what we were hoping to be on this work plan item, and it's not on the agenda for tonight, so we're probably another 2 weeks out. And I don't really think we're all that far apart, and I think another 15 minutes of discussion that night would have just taken care of it. I don't think Darcy had, I mean, you guys should be looking to the Planning Commission to implement this and making sure that the pieces are in there, which they are. I mean, everything's in there. I just think if anything, we could have knocked that out instead of tabling it for a month and then having a dinner and not having it on the agenda. And so I'd like to take tonight to take that 15, 20, 30 minutes that we should have taken, honestly, that night, and see if we can just work through what it is and you know, get a head nod from everyone so that the next time it comes up, it is a 10-minute agenda item and you guys move forward, or not. I'm okay either way. I don't want to spend a year doing something if this board doesn't want to do it and if there's concerns about it. So either way it goes, I'd love to see us just do that tonight. so that it's a head nod later. And if we can't do that, then we got to make a decision whether we keep this on our work plan.
Okay, Kevin and then Mark.
So I think I have four things, but I'm not sure, I didn't write them down, so we'll see if I can get through all four. First, we identified it, as you probably know, as a priority for the year. So we will spend the right amount of time on it. So one of the first things to do to, I think, make sure something is getting the right amount of time from the board is to make sure it's prioritized. I think we're a little bit, I think we're a very disciplined board. I'm also happy to serve. I feel very lucky here. And second, really am very appreciative that the Planning Commission took on this effort because, arguably it's not, hey, what's the planning application? What does Planning Commission do? They look at applications. This is far beyond that, and you are doing work far beyond that, and this is very necessary work, so I appreciate it. Having said those two things, when I looked at the survey, at the deliverable that we received, I wasn't getting the outcome. I'd like to hear from the Planning Commission in this informal setting what you got out of that deliverable, what you were seeing from the survey, because what I was seeing from the survey was a little of this, a little of that. I didn't see any of the gigantic themes, and I was looking for those themes, which brings me to my final point. One of the reasons why I think I struggled to find those themes was because we are effectively two towns. We are the subdivision of Rock Creek, and we are original town or Northwest. And so I don't remember who was the first one to respond that it would be nice to be able to further parse the data to see the types of responses. But I think that was a good question. And Bob, to be fair, it felt like it was a necessary data point before we could sort of go forward. And so I think we thought that would be an easier easier thing to answer than it actually was. And it turns out, in Matt trying to do some work over the last few weeks, we still have not been able to my satisfaction, or to a couple of our satisfaction at least I'll speak for me personally, to really parse that data. So I don't know the voice of original town folks that live in the Northwest area today versus the folks that live not in the Northwest area who might want to shop, have a cocktail, or see friends in the Northwest area. And to me, there does sort of feel like there's a difference. I'm not suggesting that one voice should be muted or heard beyond the other, but they are different voices, and I was interested in seeing how that data was differentiated. So what I'd like to hear from, so I agree with Bob, I think it's great if we could spend the 15 minutes or as much time as necessary to make sure that there is consensus, even though I don't think we love that word, but if there's at least some direction around what we could do as the next phase, I think that would be a great outcome for tonight. But I'd like to hear from the Planning Commission, sort of what was your aha moment from seeing that survey? Because nothing really jumped out from me. I spent a lot of time looking at it before. I've looked at it since, and I'm still sort of, before we make an investment on kind of a phase 2 with the consultant, I think we should make sure we're aligned on what the outcome of the first phase was. Thanks.
Let's go with Mark, and then we'll let Jim or someone else respond to that.
So I agree with everything that Sandy and Kevin said. My kind of principal concern with this whole process is that I want to be a good steward of the public's funds, and this contract is going to be for in excess of $100,000. So if we're going to spend that sort of money, I want to be absolutely clear that we're making the right decision, and we know what sort of deliverable we're expecting to get. Because to me, I think it's highly irresponsible to just approve a $100,000 contract and then get a work product that at the end of the day we're not necessarily satisfied with because we at the outset didn't provide the direction in order to get the work product. And this is not a reflection on the Planning Commission or a reflection on Clarion. I think everybody's certainly equipped to deliver, and I think I can totally get behind making that sort of investment. I just want to make sure that when we do actually make the decision to make the investment, we get the most bang for our buck. And when I heard Darcy start talking about zoning changes and things of that nature, that kind of set up some red flags, because if that's one of the
It's a possible
assumptions that she is kind of operating under, that we're going to need to have, zoning changes in order to facilitate this. And, we haven't yet had the guidance from the town attorney as to whether or not we legally can do this, because, we can't just snap our fingers and just change all the zoning in town. So, I want to have the legal guidance from the town attorney that says, we can actually implement what the planning commission and what our contractor wants us and is recommending us to implement. Because, to me, it would be really unfortunate if we have this beautiful master plan that we spent $100,000 on, and then all of a sudden we've got a memo from the town attorney saying it's aspirational, but we can't actually implement it because legally we have problems. So I just didn't want to rush into anything. I mean, I think I'm very grateful that the planning commission has spent the hours that you have spent working on this. I think it's sorely needed for the town. I think that Darcy can do a great job, and Clarion can do a great job. I share Kevin's feeling that this is a priority of the board, and I think it's really overdue. I just want to make sure that we do it right, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page with, okay, these are what we'd like to see in their deliverable. I have some concern about the survey, but I don't know if we're ever going to necessarily have a perfect survey. And I think if we all have smart, dedicated people in the same room together, we can all kind of outline some problem areas and some areas for improvement and some aspirational goals that we want to achieve, and then some practical things, and then some more shoot for the stars type goals, and then have an idea as to, like, okay, this is what we want this document to look like, this is what we think that we can actually achieve, and then give the proper guidance to Clarion to actually go out and implement it. But I wouldn't want somebody to go out, do a lot of work, and spend a year's worth of the planning commission's time and $100,000 of the taxpayers' money, and then find out that this is a document that we're not actually going to be able to implement and use to the best of our ability. So I want to get the most value out of this process, and if that means we just need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and go into it with a little more information, I think for me, at least from town council, that's what I'd like to hear. But
You've just refreshed my mind on a key objection I had. As put forth, it was going to be an update to the comprehensive plan. To me, that was a way different approach, and an approach that yields different results than it coming back to us as an action plan. One's more theoretical and one's more implementable. And I had always anticipated whatever comes forth is going to be this one. It's going to be somewhat more like the ULI, is that the right acronym, project, where it came forth with very specific recommendations that could be acted upon, etc. Comp plans are more, I don't know, would you call, I don't know what you call a comp plan, but to me, it's more general. This is more specific. So somewhere along the line, somebody decided on that comp plan approach, and whoever, if somebody can tell me the merits of that comp plan approach, maybe I'd understand it better, but it did not work with what I had in mind for this particular project.
So let's circle back to Kevin's question about what was it that you all got out of the survey, and to kind of tag onto Mark's comments, I'd like to also hear, what are we really trying to solve in this goal or this project as well? Because I think are we just trying to study it, and sort of to Sandy's point too, are we looking for something very specific? Are we looking for more of a guiding document, a comp plan, and so on? So
I mean, I think try and summarize what I've heard the Planning Commission kind of discuss for the last year, which was the survey, I think, reflects what some of the concerns are, is that there are a lot of mixed opinions. You're not seeing necessarily kind of one preeminent problem to, respond to the mayor, or kind of one concern. I think it's a mix of concerns because it's a mixed area. You've got a lot of things going on. And so I think the survey illustrated a little bit of why Planning Commission was having some challenges during the discussions trying to figure out some of the proper solutions, because there are a lot of mixed opinions and there are a lot of mixed needs, and I think the survey illustrated that. That would be my response to that. I think then to your question, how I envisioned it, and you guys jump in if you think I'm wrong here, but we need to kind of be twofold. The comp plan portion sets the vision for the area, so we take those mixed kind of needs, we try and craft a vision that meets as many of those needs that folks can buy into through the process. And then the second step of that is action oriented, right? So you have to set the vision first in order to be able to determine what actions that are necessary to implement the vision. So I think that's why having the facilitated meetings and the planning consultant who's very skilled at that process, who also has highly skilled legal attorneys who understand Colorado law on that firm, in conjunction then with our own city attorney, I don't have any concern, so long as Kendra's part of the process throughout, that we're going to end up with a document that is not implementable legally.
You think we will end up with an implementable
Yes.
plan?
I mean, I think we can mitigate that concern through the
Yeah,
process.
I agree. I don't think that any of this is like a deal breaker. I think it's
Yeah.
just one of those things where I need to have the assurance before we make the decision, rather than try to get the assurance after we've made a decision and committed the dollars.
Sure.
So
But Lisa, am I forgetting something? Was the action orientation in that proposal?
I don't remember the specific language.
Yeah.
I know as planning
I saw
commissioners,
it.
we talked about, and I think Bob might be having it pulled, I don't know.
Yeah, I was just
like,
pulling up our document.
We've got we had a list, and I remember kind of our goals for it. One of them was, kind of implementation strategies. I don't remember the language.
I'll just go through it. I
Okay.
mean, let's look at the bullet items. So
Is this what we saw or what you put together?
this is the Planning Commission document from PC, well, let's see, this PC memo 8/1/2017. So I think this is,
What I'm referring to is what was attached to the packet.
yeah, I think this is, if not, it's pretty close, because there are things, this isn't mine, I know, I can tell from the verbiage that, I mean, there's some Anthony stuff in here that I recognize, it's month or something. So, yeah, so over the past months, Town of Superior Planning Commission has been discussing issues affecting the Northwest Superior, which includes original town, Sagamore, Coal Creek Crossing, Superior Marketplace, and the 76 properties. Talks about the 1990s and early 2000s and all the changes that have happened. We recognize that these changes are currently and will continue to affect this area in many ways, both positively and negatively. So the PC desires to continue and formalize these discussions to help guide additional changes to Northwest Superior in a meaningful and a thoughtful way. To date, the PC has held a number of discussions through a work session format in which a number of issues were identified that warrant additional study. So the primary issues that were identified is that the character of single-family and multifamily homes that have been built and are planned under the existing RL and RM zone district standards, the traffic impacts related to the growth in the area, cut-through traffic generated by commercial uses, the potential introduction of TOD in the Superior Marketplace, the continued development of the 76th Street properties that are zoned light industrial that are sitting right in the middle of town, including future redevelopment possibility and property maintenance concerns, and then affordable housing and senior housing needs. So we determined that professional assistance would benefit future discussions and recommends the board consider the allocation of funds to engage the consultant. And so the planning process then could include a thorough public engagement process that includes residents of the entire community, business owners and representatives in the area, and developers interested in investing in Superior to determine which issues warrant additional study, a land use market and or economic analysis, including additional single and multifamily development under existing by right zoning, potential TOD in the marketplace, and or the likelihood of other planned and unanticipated development scenarios. Traffic analysis to determine means of providing traffic calming, mitigation of cut-through traffic, and other issues related to traffic in the area, and determination of planning related goals and policies for Northwest Superior for issues identified during the public engagement process and development of implementation action items and timelines. So this was what we kind of put out there to, I think, to get the money to do the initial consultant. And out of that, I think, is the other question. So,
But how did it come up with a comp plan? I
Oh, I can
saw it
speak to
more
that,
as a
so-
comp plan
Well-
update with little else.
Well, no, I don't think, well, so that planning commission meeting, we were guided in that direction. I mean, Darcy guided us that way. She felt like that was the appropriate guidance. We all agreed as a planning commission that that seemed like the right approach. I don't think the intent was that we would end with a comp plan and we wouldn't make any changes to land use code or any other actionable items. It was just from her experience, that was the right document to be pulling this information together. I don't have a problem, and I even said I voted for it, but I commented on it. I was more interested in an action plan. What was that second option she had?
I don't remember that.
A targeted,
criteria.
it wasn't even
Yeah.
targeted, it was the one in the middle, a sub-area
Three
plan, right?
options,
So we
yeah.
talked about a sub-area plan. Frankly, I don't really give a crap what we call it. I think a lot of us have in our head how we want this to go and the things that we're concerned about. And I think if the planning commission will tell you that we want to find out what this community wants and we want to get that vision down as best we can. I think we need to talk about it as a town to figure out whether it's legally, morally, ethically, everything feasible, which pieces are, what we can attack, what's low-hanging fruit, what's going to take more work, what's legally doable, decide what documents we want to go after and go after them.
So Bob, did you
All
have a-
piece by piece, getting direction from the board. I don't want to go off and do this thing and come back 8 months later and say, hey, what do you think?
So what was your, so I'll say that what I took from the meeting, from the outcome of the survey, I don't want to hear from you, but what I took was a lot of opinions. If you can make it better, make it better. If it's got to stay the same, but don't screw it up, right? That was the message that I got. This is special, don't screw it up. Keep it the same or make it better. Don't screw it up. What were your, and it was hard, it took me a while to sort of digest that. Bob, what was your,
Yeah,
because we all have we all have a thought about what we want, but from just the survey, what did people take from the survey? Is what I'm really, because then I want to take that and say, great, what's the next step? Is it another deliverable? Is there another series of community engagements? Is it, I don't know.
Yeah, I walked away with it. I didn't walk away with that.
Right.
I'm probably generalizing.
Right.
People's brains work that way. Mine went a little bit different because I've just been engaged in this for so long and listening to residents. What I walked away with was, holy crap, a lot of people care about this. To get that kind of engagement across 2 meetings and pack this room to the gills like we have never seen before, there are a lot of people who really care about this area and have concerns. And some of them are deep. I felt like a chunk of them were deep concerns, like we have to do something, right? There was a subset of that, and then there's that next subset of, yeah, I think it's worth looking into. So those are even people that probably aren't paying quite as close attention. And then there were a lot smaller group of people that just wanted to leave it the way it was. And so I looked at it, I mean, God, I just saw the whole community come together and want this to be better. There are people from our other neighborhoods who are having problems getting into this marketplace. You can see the problems from Louisville getting in and out of the marketplace. We're going to build this humongous thing over here. There are a lot of people who have trouble or are concerned about moving things around. We're all concerned about how that's going to impact the neighborhoods back here. And I saw all those. I saw people concerned about traffic. I saw people concerned about types of vehicles that were moving through. Other things came out, like the lack of enforcement in original town. There's a mix. You're right. We're gonna get people who are gonna be, just really upset that we're going after things that have been left alone for 50 years, right? And others who are like, will you please go after those things that you've left alone for 50 years because we're growing and it's getting bigger and it's becoming a bigger problem and more people are doing it. There were just all kinds of details coming out of those meetings. That's what I was hearing.
Okay, Rita.
I think for me, the survey was just to get people engaged, to let them know that this was going to be started. So it wasn't so much we were going to get the definitive answer out of it. It was more, here it is, come here, this is the beginning of a process. And we really started it because for years we've all known that we have multiple areas of town. And even when I moved here 24 years ago, people said, oh, you live in Rock Creek? I said, no, I live in Superior. I don't live in Rock Creek. I happen to have a house in that area of town, but I don't live there. So what we have are too many different areas that aren't interrelated or integrated. And so the Northwest area planning in my mind was to start with the area that really had the most desirable outcome that could happen from planning in a small area way. I'm not saying need, because nobody needs to do anything, but if we're looking at it, what is our desirable outcome? How do we integrate Original Town? How do we integrate Coal Creek Crossing? How do we integrate Sagamore? How do we integrate Rock Creek? How do we integrate Marketplace? How do we integrate Superior Downtown? So that's what they were starting with this first effort. Let's take Northwest area and try and integrate it and make it into a more cohesive, conformity-based, because that's what the comprehensive plan does, is allows for planning and conformity. Not meaning everything is the same, but you can't have somebody build something over here and then 25 years later, somebody builds something so totally different. There is some requirement for conformity with what already exists. So that doesn't mean you can't change it, but you need to think about it and plan it through. When I heard Darcy and Bob and Jim, you present the plan, the only thing I saw was missing was that your words weren't in the document. What you said you were going to do, just like what you're talking now, weren't exactly reflected in the document. So I wanted a stronger definition. Take your words that you presented, you and Bob and Darcy, what you were going to do, how you're going to go through the process, and then what the outcome was. Put that in the document. I expected it to come back like the following meeting. You know, I don't know why we're sitting here talking about this. We had this discussion. You needed to change the document to have it, the deliverable more solid. That was my takeaway from the meeting. Now, obviously, there's something different that's come out. But I thought we'd get a new document, new contract with the firmer deliverables about what the expectation was. And then I'd say that having a consultant is important because it aids in the orderly collection of data. It gives you ability to be more inclusive, or at least appear to be more inclusive of all persons' concerns. It's not just a person or group that's doing it. You have a consultant that's doing it based on a set of goals and objectives. And it just adds credibility to the process and the outcome that we come up with. So I think we're there. We just need to now redo the contract with Clarion and put in some firmer deliverables. And what we intend to do once we figure out what it is we'd like to see. And we might not know today what those things are, but we'll work them out as we develop them. I think it's a great opportunity to improve an already wonderful part of town and to have it be integrated and included in the rest of what's going on around it.
I think also to Rita's point, in terms of just like the firmer deliverables, you know, one of the things that I think would be really helpful, you know, I don't need a big presentation, and I get lost in long presentations. What would be helpful for me would be a simple identification, and prioritization is huge, because there are going to be things that are, if we're looking at the problems, right, and we've got a list of 10 things that we see as problems that need a solution, and 5 of them may be easy fixes, and 3 of them may be impossible to fix, and 2 of them might take some time. To help kind of rank where we think we're going to have like the biggest impact. These are the things that are going to be lingering problems for the foreseeable future. This is something realistically that's never going to go away, and then have the goals and propose solutions. And these are the things that we think that we can implement rather quickly. These are the things that we'd like to see change over time, over the next 10 years. This is something for 25 to 50 years. I think that, to me, is a more kind of useful framework for just kind of understanding, because we can't just snap our fingers and make everything the way we want it to be. And to that point, like, not everything's a problem. Like, there's a good, this is a great community that needs preservation as well. So what are the things that really need to be preserved? What are the things that make this area unique? What are the aspects of Northwest Superior that need to be focused? And I think just kind of calling out those things in a simpler document without 30 pages of slides, I think is going to render it a more useful document that actually can then we can refresh our recollection, look back at it 6 months down the road and say, okay, yeah, this is what we talked about in this meeting. These were the things we all had consensus on. These are the things we want to implement now. Okay, Clarion, go do your work.
Where it fell apart for some of us was in the contract, the actual contract part, where it defined the deliverables. I like your definition of deliverables a whole lot more than the definition in there. So somebody, before it comes back to us, has to look there and they've got to read what was on paper, because that's what we had to act upon, and make sure that's the project we wanted. And that wasn't the project I wanted. I agree with Lisa, you've always got to have that vision. But a vision is nothing if it's only a vision. And that's sort of comp plan, right?
So
how are we going to enact that vision?
So Rita, all due respect,
Mhm.
I've heard 4 different things, and I heard it that night. I had no, I just gave up. And I talked to 4 of you.
Mhm.
You all want different things. You all want this document to look a little bit differently. You want more details.
I want more details.
And all of you, and you want the survey. I mean,
Well,
you sat up,
so, I mean,
hang
I
on.
don't- so I don't think these
I
are
want to
4
pick on just
different
you, Kevin.
things.
Everybody, every one of you had something different that was important to you. I didn't know what the hell to do with it. You wanted something, you wanted something, you wanted something, you wanted something, and let's table this. That's how that ended. And so, and it's happening again tonight, right? Because I'm not getting the sense. I'm not sure.
The
I
reason
can walk
it was
away. I mean, I can
tabled.
take this and I can put it in front of the agenda item and tell you what I think we ought to do, but I don't know what we're going to do yet, because I want to engage the community to find out whether we want to do these things or not. I think there are some obvious choices in here, and we can say these are things we're going to explore. We've said them over and over and over again, and we can put them in the presentation, but I don't know what we're going to do. I don't even, no, that wasn't quite right. I don't know what the outcome of the initial engagement is going to look like.
No, I don't think
We may
anybody's
walk
saying-
away from
I'm
this-
not saying you need to know what the outcome is. I want to say is what the process is going
No,
to be.
but Mark
The word
wanted,
that you
he
used about-
wanted some details.
Okay.
And
No.
Mark was just rattling off some details that was just different. Everybody is thinking about this differently. And so it's really hard for a planning commission and a consultant to come back to you
Now, I
with a
think
document that's going to
you're
satisfy.
making it much harder than it
I
actually
mean,
is.
I might be.
Goals, what's the goal? I'll say my goal for the Northwest Superior project. I want this part of town to thrive as the Superior Town Center is built out and does all it's intended to do. I want both parts to thrive. They can have unique personalities, they can provide unique benefits to the town. Bottom line is they've got to thrive, right? They've got to coexist well. What would that look like?
And will your board members support that if I bring that forward? That's, I mean, honestly, is that enough?
Is that
That's
a
cool.
board
I mean,
goal or is that a Sandy?
Well, I think that's, when I talk about integration and it's really how you live here, it's not how we eat here. You know, Kevin, I'm not dismissing what he said, but I don't really care what Rock Creek current HOA residents think about coming down to eat in Marketplace. I don't care about that. I want to know how it integrates with all of Superior, the Marketplace, and how it impacts the original town and the Coal Creek Crossing and the Sagamore people, because they're the ones that live right next to it. So I think the way you said it, Sandy, is good. It's what I'm saying too, even though you might hear the different words. How do you live here in a planned way that we all participate in and thrive in Superior? And the outcome, I'm not saying the outcome being we're going to do these many code changes, we're going to do this and this and this. I'm saying,
Understood.
what do we need to change? That will be the outcome. It'll come forward with a list of things that would be prioritized per Mark's request based on
Yet to
the
be
outcome
determined.
of this.
But we need that contract approved to go through
Well, that's
that
why I'm
process
saying
to
bring it
figure that
back.
out.
I'm ready to
And
sign it. I was
yeah,
ready to
just wanna
sign
make
it.
sure.
the next
I don't
day.
want anybody to think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I'm suggesting that we need to have like, 5 bullet points of solutions, designed from the outset.
Mhm.
There are issues that we could all rattle off right now that have been issues for a long time, right? That's a starting point. There are issues that we want to preserve that we could rattle off right now. That's a starting point, and it's coming up with kind of those data points that can lead the public outreach and community engagement meetings to say, listen, we put our heads together, our thinking caps on, this is what we're coming up with. Let that spur the discussion towards, is there anything we're missing? Get the community outreach. Maybe people think that there's something that some people think is a problem that actually is something that needs to be preserved, or vice versa. And that's the purpose of having the community outreach. But I think that you need, if you're going to have the community outreach, you need at a minimum to have some starting point with some, kind of goals or kind of principle, consensus, understanding of, this is where we are. These are the aspects of the town. Here are some lingering problems. Here are some issues for preservation, and here are the opportunities. And from that, then you can say, okay, our hopes is we're going to have a proposed solution that is going to be actionable, that'll be implementable. At this juncture, maybe there's a couple of them that we already think that these are low-hanging fruit type opportunities that we think we can implement. And then maybe there's some additional ones that we're going to need to do the community outreach to actually get there. I feel like based on the presentation that we saw, we didn't have something in a structured way that, to me, I felt comfortable committing $100,000 to.
Well, and let's address this issue. Why did we avoid a vote? We avoided a vote. I purposely drove this in a direction where we didn't vote, because as constructed, I would have had to vote no on that proposal, right? Because it was in the contract. The deliverables were spelled out in the contract, and I disagreed with them. So I would have had to vote no on something that's a top priority. So rather than vote no, you say, let's bring it back in another form and work out the kinks. Because I don't want to vote no for it, I want to vote yes for it. So let's work out the kinks.
Yeah, I just also want to read, so I went into that with my preparation thinking I would vote yes, that I was in favor of it, still am in theory in favor of it. I'll boil down, Bob, what I think. I had 4 concerns. Number one, I think Mark's making a good point. I didn't hear a compelling reason in the presentation to continue to spend taxpayer dollars, right? It just wasn't. It's the first thing. I think we're all, I think, aligned, but Mark and I have had some other conversations. I think we're very aligned on everything we do needs to make sure that there's a compelling reason. Should those dollars be spent somewhere else, and what would be what would be the consequence if you didn't spend those dollars? And to me, it just didn't. It didn't push me over the edge. That alone would not have made me vote no.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Are you saying that the proposal was not something that you'd spend the money on, or was it the Northwest Area Planning?
No, the proposal itself.
Okay,
Northwest Area
so
Planning.
that's where I think you all probably have heard differently. None of us, at least I don't think I've ever heard anybody say Northwest Area Planning is not something we want to do.
Right.
It was this way of
Articulate.
that
Right.
money for that particular contract wasn't robust enough, those are my words,
Right.
in order to define what we were going to do to actually advance the Northwest Area Planning.
And a big part of what I've said is, hey, when we're in over our head, hire a consultant. None of us do this, to the best of my knowledge, for a living, right? So we've hired somebody to help guide us. They are the best, or very good. It's the right decision. We just need to guide them in terms of what we want. So that was my first thing. Number two, the survey itself, I was bothered by the outcomes, right? I mean, you're making a very compelling reason that what the people in Rock Creek think about coming down and whether or not I want a pizza shop or houses that's why I wanted to see the data differently. The data was really, it was just schizophrenic, and I needed to break it down, and we just couldn't. So that frustrated me, but that alone would not have made me vote no. Number 3, there was, I think she said the word code change. I was making tick marks 4 times. I'll tell you right now, I'm not.
Zoning
change.
What she
right.
said about that.
I think it was 3 or 4 times.
Oh, or 10 or 12, 15.
I'll tell you, right. I'll tell you, I think there are, and I think I said it that night, there are other tools in the toolbox around how you could incent people, whether or not it's voluntary programs, incentive programs, whether or not it's.
Can you explain what you think that term means? Because I really think we have a huge misunderstanding across the table as to what that means. So can you say
Incentive or code change?
zoning? The thing
zoning
that Darcy
change.
was saying, what was going through your mind?
To me, I think if there is property that is zoned light industrial today, I do not have an appetite to revisit light industrial zoning.
That is not on our radar.
Well,
Okay.
or
Nope.
medium to low.
Or medium to
There's,
low. or
none of
anything.
that is in our radar. Nobody on this planning commission has any interest in doing that. If anybody wants to come forward and bring that forward,
Okay.
that's for the board
So
to
that's-
decide.
but that was- I
I would
felt
like
like-
to erase that
I
because,
felt like we had to have that conversation. So
But-
that was number 3.
well, hang on,
Okay.
because if you don't mind.
No.
Zoning,
This is done.
zoning, I've been exploring this. I've talked to Martin, I've talked to Stephen, I've talked to Matt, talked to Darcy, trying to understand how people use and throw around that term. And I'm going to speak a little bit, and I may turn it over to those who know better. But when we're talking about zoning changes, that can be everything from what you just said on the high end of asking light industrial to zone down, right? And there's usually big costs associated with that, right? Because there's a value to the property. And it can be done, but we're not interested in doing that. All the way down to making changes to our land use code that affect zoning, whether that's setbacks forward, and that's where we were talking. That's the zoning. When in fact we never, as a planning commission, even talked about zoning changes. We always used the term land use code changes or design code interest. Those are the only things that we're interested in talking about. So I'd like to remove your concern that there's anything about
But
that.
it was the multiple phraseology.
I know, so I
That's
just
why I
wish
felt
you
like there
would've just-
needed a dialogue.
yeah,
So this
agreed.
is why, so now it makes me, so you had me, maybe I was regretting pushing off the vote, but now I'm happy we pushed off the vote because we needed to have this informal
But
dialogue.
to that point,
Wait, let me
Bob,
get to number 4.
but no, just on that zoning issue.
I'm tracking you,
I
Kevin. I'll
think
let you
that
not do
that's
number 4.
something that we as a board and as a planning commission all could use some additional guidance as to what we can and cannot do. So
Right.
just like from the town attorney, because there is a misunderstanding as to what land use and zoning all means, and we don't want to inadvertently step into something that we can't do. Let's just understand what we can and cannot do from the outset, and then we can move forward.
And number 4.
And then 4th, but that was alone, that number 3 was the one that said, I gotta tap the brakes, right? And I think a lot of us felt the same way. And then 4th was, and this was also a concern, the lack of precision around deliverables. I didn't know what success looked like. I think you guys talked about the deliverable. I just wasn't exactly sure what I was gonna get. So having a story that, to me, that solves each one of those 4 things, it's a slam dunk for me. Even if it came back and had the precision that, let me be very prescriptive around what how much was it, $110,000 deliverable was going to look like. And, oh, by the way, we understand that after consulting with town council and taking the pulse of the board, we're not making major code changes, meaning changing, RM to whatever else. That's off the table. But I agree with you that looking at setbacks or incentives, those are great creative ideas and should absolutely be pursued.
So I share all of those concerns and did during the meeting. I guess for me, I would have wanted to see or get a direction from the survey that was done in the initial phase, get some kind of direction of something that says, yes, here's the problem that we need to go after. And what it seemed like, it was kind of a third. As Bob, as you mentioned, some wanted yes, some wanted nothing, and then some maybe. So it just, the initial results did not scream out to me, wow, we've got a problem that we need to throw 100 grand at fixing.
But you can't, like, you have to think about again, or keep in mind, what was that those initial meetings meant to do? It's really to engage residents and begin the conversation. It wasn't to determine at that point in time, the first meeting, what the outcome is supposed to be. So I don't think we should put much story in that other than this is a starting point. And these are some of the things that people said off the top of their heads and after giving it some thought about before they came to the meeting. But we didn't even engage really the consultant to do the work yet. We just engaged the consultant to engage the community to begin the conversation. Let's not get too hung up on what somebody said yet, because that wasn't, as far as I'm concerned, so formalized of a data gathering effort.
You caught a group unawares. They
Right.
came
Right.
in to hear
Right.
about it. They didn't come in fully informed to where they could
Right.
really productively contribute to the conversation.
And we didn't do
That's
it.
what's going to happen.
We didn't do it with the intent to find out what it was we wanted to do in the Northwest Area Planning. It was to start the conversation, because this is going to be a long process. It can't be just done in 2 meetings.
Yeah,
You
right.
got to
That's
gauge, you got to bring in the people's ideas, you got to listen to them, you have to modify it, you have to manage it, not manipulate, that's the wrong word, massage, to try and fit as
Guide it.
much.
That could be the
I think-
wrong word too.
Yeah, that could be a bad word too. But no, really, this is a process that is engaging a lot of individual agendas and personalities and characteristics. It's going to take a while, but it can be done. Because the outcome will be something that everybody can get behind. It'll be a better community. Because right now, we all have concerns about how the northwest part of Superior interacts and engages and intersects with the rest of Superior. And that's the objective.
Let's go, Lisa and Jason.
So I think, to the mayor's concern, the third, we've had a lot of meetings, this item's been on our agenda quite a bit. We've heard from a lot of people, and I think the third, we're hearing very strong opinions coming from all of those different points. And so I think that's right. There's not one focus, there's not one identifiable, if we could fix this one thing, then everything is solved. And I think that's part of the challenge with, like, to Rita's point, that's part of the challenge with this, why the planning effort is needed. So hopefully, we can bring the third together and we can come up with solutions that meet as many needs as possible. And so that people do, I think, understand maybe what some of the tools are that we have available to meet those needs. So, I think we've heard a lot over the last year from folks that this is a really important thing for them. And I think when you look at development pressure in the area, this is the area that is seeing change, it's likely to see change, and I think we would be negligent not to engage at this time in this manner. I was going to make one other point, but I don't remember what it was.
So I think one important thing that happened that night, and I noticed it, there was a table along this wall here and there was a group over here that after voting, and there was a short discussion on what the question was, they were like, oh, that's what they were talking about. And then after the whole meeting was over, there were multiple people that came up to us and they were like, this is a great start. And I had at least 5 people that I talked to who were like, I didn't understand some of the questions, and then once it all started coming together and my brain started to wrap around it, I understood the process a little more. This is a very great, very good start to the whole process. And I think that was probably one of the most interesting things that I took from that night. And that could be one of the influencers in the results that or lack of results that we might have
Right,
missed.
and remember the first night, there was really no interaction. That was a enhancement
That
at
was
our
the
request
night.
for the second night. Because the first night was cold, here's the question, give us the answer.
Right.
Unfortunately, that was mostly Rock Creek. Most of the people who were from this area were at this meeting.
And we got done early,
Yeah.
before the time, and we didn't take advantage of that last half hour.
And I remember the reason for the comp plan is the approach. We talked about that. We talked about a number of different vehicles, and I think we settled on comp plan because it is a document that we regularly come back to, and it would provide a touching point for that particular amendment to the comp plan. We talked about a small area plan, but sometimes these one-off plans can get put on a shelf and you never remember to go back and revisit.
Yeah, but by definition, if you achieve a Northwest area plan, a sub-area, Northwest sub-area plan or whatever, that must then affect the comp plan, right? We would be remiss not to go and modify the objectives and the goals in the comp plan once we have this Northwest sub-area plan. However, converse doesn't necessarily occur. If all we focus on is the comp plan, we don't necessarily have this action-oriented plan over here.
I think you
So-
can have an action-oriented comp
By
plan.
the way, the thing that keeps gnawing at me, if I recall right, Sagamore was left entirely out of her presentation. And if I'm right, please put it back in.
That was
The one-
inadvertent.
Yeah, please put Sagamore back in. It said the specifics and it left Sagamore out, and I keep meaning to. So let's make sure that's in there. So I actually think it's totally doable. I think you sync what you read, Bob, against those deliverables that were in that contract. Make sure that those last deliverables are action-oriented, that translate the vision into the specific actionable goals and bring it back to us. And I don't think it's going to take that much more discussion, but you have to present something to us we can vote yes for, right?
Is this worth spending time on? I guess, is there enough feeling from the board that this project is worth $100,000 and a lot of time and effort
I
from
think it was
staff and
150.
from planning commission and from the town board to pursue?
Wait, what I'm hearing is
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've all said yes several
I mean,
times.
this
Same
is,
here.
this is in our plan of one of the things that we as trustees want to see us accomplish this year. This is a critical part of what we're doing. What bothered me about the contract that we got from Clarion was I saw a bunch of tasks, but I didn't see anything that told me that we were going to get to what we were talking about with those same objectives that Bob outlined. You could have done it on any part of town, but it didn't tell me how we were going to solve those problems. And so I would like to see, some of the things that were in there, I went, well, do we really need that? I don't know that that's going to help us do, and I had never thought about it until Trustee Pennington said it. I want to see this area thrive, and I want to see us be able to resolve the conflicts that we've got going on in that part of town. We need to be able to have traffic flow through there and be able to still keep the people who live there happy. And how do we come up with a compromise that does that? And so that contract for me felt a little like it was missing the point. And so, I would be willing to spend the $100,000 right now. I mean, I believe strongly we need to do this, but I just didn't feel like the contract captured our passion for getting this done.
So hold on just a second. We got about 10, 15 minutes. I'd like to hear from a couple of planning commissioners we hadn't heard from, just make sure everybody's voices are heard, and then I think we'll, kind of circle back to a direction.
So let me say real quickly while I have this thought in my mind. I see where the disconnect is, and this kind of alludes back to Rita's point. We started, and we're at the point where we think we started community engagement. We know that there are some issues that need to be addressed in this area, and we feel strongly that they need to be addressed, which is why we presented this plan to you. Part of what was happening is that we've heard from a number of people that are kind of tired of the process, if you will, and want to see some action taking place and us moving forward on this issue as a town. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes in, is that there doesn't seem to be the same amount of interest throughout our board, throughout our town government, as the amount of interest that has been put forward or brought forward by community members. So therefore, I think this is a starting point. And when we start talking about goals and an end point, I think that's where the disconnect happens, because I don't think anyone on the planning commission thinks that that's where we are yet. I don't think that where we are in this process is at a point where we can say, this needs to happen for this area.
So Anthony, at the end of $152,000 more dollars being spent, where do you think we should be?
At that point, I agree. I think we should have a clear idea of where we need to take this part of town. Ideas about what needs to happen there for both residents and for businesses and for the community at large. So that's where I think we were. I thought that at the end of that process, we'd have a pretty comprehensive plan about how to proceed and where to take it.
I want to tack on that because I think it goes a little farther than that. And I'll try to get that clarified from Darcy, but I'm thinking there would be, somewhere towards the end of this, she describes this approach could result in shifting resources and time commitments towards implementation of recommendations that emerge from the community engagement process in phase 2 and away from a completion of a formal plan as an outcome of the process. So that says to me that, we want this to be flexible based on, we might find out really quick. We might find out early in phase 1 what the priorities are, and we may want to shift implementation, which changes everything, because then we got to start talking to the board. We're going to have more engagement with you. There are, we could be requesting things that require board approval, right? But we just don't know yet, right? That's the issue. But I think I'm hoping, Anthony, that it's more than just a document saying what we're going to do at the end of this. That there's actually that towards the middle or the end of this, we're actually moving through implementation on some of those things, and we should probably get that clarified with Darcy. But I think that's what I'm reading here.
That's what I'm saying anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
but there should be some implementation. Jerry says here.
Well, and that's, I've been quiet because I've been listening to the board because it is a very important topic, especially to Bob and the rest of us. What I'm hearing the board is that you want to say yes, but you need more specifics as to where Clarion is going with this research, and then a certain outcome of that research. You need specific actionable items of saying, what are we going to do about
How are we going to do it?
the traffic? And then we survey the town residents in original town, in Northwest Superior, and get their opinion separate from Rock Creekers and understand what they want to see. Some of the folks in original town in Northwest Superior may say, don't do anything.
Right.
We've heard that.
But Jerry, it's a great
But
point.
that's-
Having that,
we need
that
to be
final
more
deliverable-
specific. That's what we need in the contract.
Your final deliverables shall answer the following questions.
That's what we need in the contract.
Because I like what Bob said very early, that I don't really care what this thing is called, whether or not it's like where it fits. I just want something that provides me and future board members some direction around what we're trying to do in this really special part of the community, right? And so if it just answered, 5 questions, right?
And with as much specifics as you can get, because it might be, as Bob was saying, Jerry, earlier, or just before you, right now, everybody knows traffic is a concern. We don't know what it is that is the concern yet, because you haven't gone through the process. And what you're going to do about that concern. So you can say, I'm going to look at these areas that have come up and other areas that develop or bubble up out of the process. And then, because you can't specifically say today, I'm going to fix the traffic problem on this street by doing this. Well, you don't know what that is yet. But you can say, here are the concerns. I think Bob went through those. So yes, be as specific as you can, but you don't have to say, I'm going to do this to fix this. I'm going to do Y to fix X, because I don't know what that is yet, in every case.
Right.
Okay. All right.
So I just have, everyone's talked and said a lot. So I think what I heard, because I took a lot of notes here, is that we didn't give you on, I'll call it one sheet of paper, because in my life it's an executive summary that says, here's what we're going to do, and here's what you can expect from us. Instead of getting a 20-page document that is strung out and saying, if we lay it out, here's our goals, here's what we're going to give you, the deliverables at the end of this, and here's what we think how we're going to achieve this. If we lay that out, I think we've talked about it enough here tonight that we kind of understand what you're looking for, that we can't be that specific that we know exactly what they're going to be. What we know, we're going to answer these questions when we're said and done. And it might change a little bit by the time we get there, but we at least know kind of what we want to go after. We don't know the outcome.
And for the sake of time, I mean, Stephen's the one that's been, processing all of this behind the scenes, right? Like, we came up with this item, this kind of summary, and then, staff drafted the RFP, and they've been working with Clarion to do the scope and the contract. I mean, I don't know that, I'm fine if this doesn't come back to the planning commission for the sake of time. I feel like we've got direction from the board, and I feel like staff has heard that, and I think we could bypass another planning commission discussion about this and just have staff do the
Somebody
contract.
from planning commission, be it the chair and vice chair, or whatever, need to look at a staff document to make sure. Because
Sure.
we don't want this coming back to us lacking
Yeah.
again.
Do you want a presentation from the planning commission rather than from Darcy? Does that make more sense? With Darcy being there, I mean, I think
The presentation and the
Yes.
paper product have,
Yes, I would, okay.
but they have to be in
Yes.
sync.
Yes.
You're responsible. I was amazed that night it was coming and you weren't even going to be the ones presenting it.
But the
Okay.
point is, had you presented with that same documentation we have to vote on, I still would have had to say no. The presentation has to be in sync with what it is we vote on.
I'm not sure the planning
Ultimately-
commission would have said zoning changes 18 times. though,
Yeah,
so-
well, I always say,
Expected it all.
you weren't circling the wagons around the same campfire, so you guys need to get we need to be around the same campfire. And if, who's ever responsible for it should do the presentation. It's not the consultant that's responsible for this. If they were presenting to do something for the board, that would have been different, but we were hearing your
Yeah, she works for you.
presentation, planning commission, yours, I'm looking at you, Jim, and Bob, and you guys came, but only, I think, because a couple of us called and said, who's presenting this from the planning commission? And you weren't even planning on being there, and that is something that I think, I don't like when staff or consultants present something that's owned by someone, either a developer or another committee member or commission. I think the owner should present the information.
Well, especially because we haven't talked with the consultant, right? So
Right.
It's the game of telephone, right? And it's
Right.
something's getting lost. So
Right.
we're having the discussion here with you guys. I think we're making a lot of progress in terms of, getting some additional guidance in terms of what we'd like to see. And then, when you represent it to the board with Darcy, hopefully we're all on the same page. We've cured the contractual issues so Mayor Pro Tem Pennington can get behind it. And
Well,
then we
I
can
have to
all-
say,
And if not, we'll do it.
I don't get turned off by the word zoning changes. There may, my attitude is, if you came back to me and said, this was a historical zoning, and this is now 2018, and it doesn't work well, I think it is fair game to raise that. And then there are always financial considerations about how you make that happen. So if there is something totally out of whack, I don't think you need to work around it and try to pretend it works. I do think you can come before us and say, this particular zoning is a real problem. Is there something we can do about it?
Some
Right?
things that were done in 1908 and in 38 and in 68 may not be applicable in today's 21st century. And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking that question. Is 1908 zoning, in codes appropriate? Doesn't mean that we can automatically change them, but we can ask the question, right?
And that's why there's some problems that are easier to solve than others, right?
Yeah.
So, there may be those items that are just like, okay, these are the low-hanging fruit, and then these are the ones that are more long-term, like, okay, strategically thinking, maybe this means that we need to, I'm with Mayor Pro Tem Pennington, I'm not necessarily against it. I would like to have the guidance from the town attorney as to what we can and cannot do. There may be things that we can do, but it may require money. So there's like legal challenges, and there's practical challenges of what things cost, and then actually implementing this thing down the road. So.
And that's helpful in managing
The ultimate
your-
point, though, that I want to say is that I want everybody here around the table to know and agree that we all think Northwest area planning is a priority for 2018.
So I think our question is going to be, how do we continue with the momentum that we have? And how do we keep this process moving forward and so that it doesn't become stagnant? And
That's your responsibility, go for it, take it, it's yours.
I think we can do that now.
Yeah.
Just a quick summary, maybe we can wrap this up, whether it's me or, I'm going to participate. with Jim and whoever else will help me pull this together. But it's going to basically be the presentation I kind of gave in the very beginning, which are, here are the issues, here are the concerns, here are the things that came out of the survey, right? So this is what came out of the engagement process, and here are the tools that we're likely going to utilize to resolve any issues that come up. So, and I don't know what they're going to be yet, but I'll just summarize those bullet points with an understanding that this isn't what's going to happen. This is what these are the problems. Here are the goals. Here are the tools we expect we're going to implement to make those happen. And we'll work with Darcy to make sure the contract.
Darcy, staff, and our attorney.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
and I'm looking at Matt, you gotta make sure that the appropriate staff and legal advice is provided to the planning commission as they go through this process.
See, I would start there. I would
Yep.
start with the attorney, just like Mark said, because really the rest of it's academic. If we can't
Yeah.
legally affect the changes that everybody settles on,
Don't waste the time.
yeah, save the money, save the time. You know,
We'll
let's
find that
figure-
out early on.
Yeah. but
And
I
we
think
know
should
some of
do it
these
like
things. I mean,
right away.
I'm
Yeah.
hearing what
Yeah.
people are saying, and Mark, I hear you. I have sat on that planning commission, I have made land use code changes, and we have sent them to the board, and they've gotten changed. And I'm not suggesting that's what's gonna happen, but I think there's a lot of knowledge here of what we're pretty comfortable doing. And there are some things that we know we're gonna have to go to the attorney to talk to and find out whether it's reasonable. And there are things we're probably not gonna be able to touch, right, that are just,
Okay, we have
Met
We
on.
got to go.
met the obligations here. Thank you all for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank
Good
you.
work session.
We need
Go.
to do this every
You.
6 months, not every year. We keep saying
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees, the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors, and the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Board of Directors for Monday, February 26, 2018. We have some special guests here to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll let, before we rise, we'll let them come in and guide us in this next process.
They're social.
Okay, so tonight we have Adrian Swanson of Troop 278, Boy Scouts 278. We have Riley Swanson, Pack 500, and their mom is Regina Swanson. So, welcome.
Attention. Audience, please rise. Now salute. Those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your color guard. Forward march. Color guard hold. Face the colors. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color guard, retreat. Thank you.
Hold on. We always welcome our scouts in for Pledge of Allegiance ceremony, so thank you for joining us tonight. All right, next we'll have the roll call, please.
Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Trustees Rita Dozell.
Here.
Sandy Hammerly.
Here.
Chris Hansen. Mark Lasis.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Bill Sargent here.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Anyone on the board like to make any changes or anything to the agenda? Or if not, I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved?
Motion by Trustee Lasis, second by Trustee Dozell. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. All right, next is reports, questions, and issues. Who'd like to start?
I'll go first.
Mark?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Sandy Hammerly?
I also have nothing to report.
Okay. Sandy Pennington?
Slouches, come on.
It's been a quick 2 weeks.
Had a CAPS meeting last Thursday. It was very good. Bill Jenks attended. A lot of discussion was given to the combination grand opening and the first Downtown Superior Festival, which is at least tentatively named the main event at Downtown Superior. It's on Main Street, in case you don't get this, okay? The main event. Okay, and what came up, and there were a couple of issues that this board will want to look at. Ranch Capital eventually wants to seek an entertainment district designation for that area, and that is completely in keeping with the PDA we approved. In my opinion, I asked Matt whether or not we, the town board, could initiate that entertainment district designation rather than wait for them to do it, and he said yes.
Yes.
So
Sorry, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I just say, why wait? why not put the tools in place so that it can function as an entertainment district, which one of the, Kendra, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things then is that you can carry alcohol out of, like Brunelleschi's, down onto the plaza for that specific event. So anyway, I support that. Matt suggested we bring it up at the next retreat. Bill reiterated that he expects the Village Green to be completed this summer. And it's just my personal opinion that we reiterate at that time that any money that goes towards civic space expenses according to the cost-sharing agreement must be mutually agreed upon. That's right there on the page I brought to our attention last time. And anyway, that's my little wish that we clarify that topic. We also discussed with him his vision for public art in the town center, and while he's on exactly the same page as CAPS, he wants it to be rich with public art and very interesting with its look and feel. He did not acknowledge that Ranch has any financial obligation to fund public art, and asked that that be put in writing, and cite the place in the cost-sharing agreement or development agreement that referenced that. So I've talked that over with Matt, and Matt's prepared to do that. First Fridays is this Friday, March 2nd. Would anybody here like to host it?
I will check my calendar and call you tomorrow.
I can be the backup to anybody, but I want to give people an option. Okay. Kevin first. If you can't do it, I'll do it. Went to the pickleball engagement last Wednesday, and that was fun to see. I think there's a lot of interest in pickleball in this community. Where it lands is the dilemma. And Sandy, you can address that more if you want to. And then Beth Barrett retired as the director of the library in Louisville, and several of us attended that on Friday. There was a reference in the digest this week to the Coal Creek restoration, Matt, and you said a lot of trees were being taken out, but they will be replanted as overall Parks 1 and 2 project. I thought they were going to be replanted as part of the Coal Creek restoration.
That's correct. That was a misstatement in my report. It's
okay.
What's in the Coal Creek FDP is how it will be planted.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify it. That's all.
Okay, Rita.
Yes, I attended a historical commission meeting on Friday the 16th, and then a Denver Regional Council of Government meeting, Finance Committee meeting, and Board of Directors meeting last Wednesday. And Ashley Stoltzman, councilwoman from Louisville, was voted in as treasurer of the Dr. Cog board. It's a pretty big deal, and I congratulate her for that. And then I also attended the Beth Barrett librarian retirement party on Friday. It was a really fun event Friday afternoon. And then coming up this week on March 1st, the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport is having a community open house, and I would encourage all residents of Superior and Louisville, if you're listening, anyone is listening from Louisville, to attend this community open house from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport. It's going to be right at the terminal building there, and it'll be on the second floor in the Mount Evans conference room. So if you have concerns about the traffic patterns over Superior that have increased and gotten to be louder, it appears anyway, louder and more frequent, please come and express your concerns and give comment, public comment at that meeting. Again, it's this Thursday, March 1st, from 7 to 9 p.m., and it will be at the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport, formerly the Jeffco Regional Airport. It's still under the Jefferson County Commissioner's Airport Authority responsibility, on the second floor of the actual terminal building. Thank you. That's all.
Kevin?
Thank you. I have no announcements, but I do want to address the tragedy
about 12 days ago in Parkland, Florida. I'm not going to be overly political, but I do want to make 2 comments. Number one, I'm tremendously proud of the young adults in Florida and throughout the U.S. who are becoming activists. I think every generation has its own identity, and I applaud this generation for taking this on. I hope that their identity is one that will make these necessary changes. Some of us will dismiss their ages as being too young to affect change. I'm lucky enough to go see Hamilton next weekend, and I was reminded that Aaron Burr was 19 when he began his activism. So I applaud those young adults. Second, it will take years to make changes and to go through the political system. There is something that we could all do today. If you see something, say something. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a follow-up item. Several weeks ago, there was a Facebook thread about poor cell phone coverage in town, and some emails circulated amongst our board asking if we could get some company representatives in here to help discuss that. I took this on as a little bit of a research project. I've had several conversations with people in the cell phone industry, and the regional manager of cellular sales. The Verizon store in town was particularly helpful in kind of connecting me with some different people. Anyway, I just wanted to pass along that in this upcoming edition of Rock Creek Living, you'll see an article that I wrote on this issue. And since it's kind of a fluid issue with things always being updated, I've also put the same article on my mayor's Facebook page and have some updates they're posted there as well, and would welcome dialogue from residents that have knowledge about this, have specific issues. But in the article and on the Facebook page, I put some specific things that residents can do in their own homes to help with cell phone coverage in their homes. So just to follow up there. Next month, in March, we only have one meeting. We're off the second meeting, which is spring break week, so only one meeting next March. This Friday, March 2nd, 12 noon, Floyd's at Sports Stable is having their grand open ribbon cutting. I will not be there. I usually try to attend all ribbon cuttings, and if any of you are available to do that, I think it'd be great, and just let them know how much that we all appreciate investment in our community. The next board meeting, March 12th, I will be in Washington, D.C. for the National League of Cities Conference and the 36 Mayors and Commissioners trip that will both be back-to-back that week, so I'll be there the full week. Sandy will be conducting the meeting on March 12th. March 31st, Sports Stable is hosting a tribute to Adams County Deputy Heath Gum, who was killed in the line of duty several weeks ago, and all proceeds are going to his family, and so thanks to the Sports Stable for hosting that event. And April 10th is the annual State of Superior Mayor and Manager Update. We've got that planned for April 10th. It's going to be at Brunelleschi's at the Sports Stable. This event I started 4 years ago. A lot of towns do town and city updates, and I don't think we'd ever done one, so I thought it was important to have one. Just an opportunity for us to give an overview of what's going on in the town, talk a little bit about the town budget, projects that are going on in town, and just invite residents in for an opportunity to have a dialogue about those things. We're going to have it at Brunelleschi's. It's going to be in the east side of their restaurant. They've got some TV screens up there that we'll use for the PowerPoint slides. We're also going to have a pizza buffet available for those who want it. No cost, no reservations. Food will be first come, first serve. It's not really a full lunch, more of a snack. So open for food and a conversation at 11:30. Program starts at 12 noon. 30 minutes, give or take, for the presentation, and then ample time for question and answer. Thanks to Heather and the Chamber of Commerce team for helping to manage the sign-up. So we ask people to sign up on that just so we've got a accurate count of who's coming. So invite residents to come out to that event. And thanks again to the Swansons for coming to do our flag ceremony tonight. You're always welcome, and bring other scouts to future meetings. So thank you again for coming. All right, Town Manager.
On the Verizon thing, we have a meeting with Verizon reps on Wednesday as well to talk about coverage and what can be done, if anything. So I'll give you an update on that meeting. I sent out the priorities originally, and then I received some feedback on some potential revisions to those priorities. So I attached it to the last week's report. So let me know if you have any others or if you're comfortable with those, and get them finalized. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Kendra?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay, and Phyllis? All right. All right, we are on to public comment. If there's anyone in the public that'd like to make any comments, now's your chance. Okay, going once, twice, all right. Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations, which we have none. All right, now we're on to the consent agenda. See, we're way ahead of schedule already. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Trustee Dozell, second by Trustee Ryan. And, sorry. And I think we'll need a roll call vote for this because we're spending some money.
Dozell,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Hammerly,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. Thank you. That was a big consent agenda. All right. Now we're on to item number 11, presentation of the art project in the roundabout at Main Street and McCaslin Boulevard. And we're a little ahead of schedule. They're still probably planning on 7:40.
Yeah,
So
that was-
we could have
caught them off guard, I think.
We could have a recess.
So
here.
tonight we have the three artists that the committee has recommended to present to the board tonight, and they've selected the order in which the artists are going to present. Will allow the artists to present each of their pieces of proposed art, and then open up for questions from the board, and then discussion.
Okay. Very good.
Good evening, everyone. We are really excited to be here and introducing our three
I'm sorry,
finalists.
Daryl, do you mind starting with your name and
Oh, yeah, sorry.
introductions?
Daryl McCool. I live just down the street here in Superior. And we are, as I was saying, really excited to be presenting you guys with the three finalists on the Superior Main Street Roundabout project. I'm going to be really brief. Jane has a little bit more of an introduction, but I did want to just take a minute to let you know that we are all seeing these presentations together for the first time. We have been in dialogue with the artists, but we've not seen what you guys are being presented with tonight either. So that being said, we're hoping that you will let the CAPS committee provide you with a formal recommendation at a later date after we've all had a chance to view and digest what we're seeing tonight. We've got a lot of data that we would love to bring forward, the concept to completion components that we really want to give to you as a full package while you're considering which one to choose for the roundabout. So without further ado, I'm going to let Jane give you just a little educational component. We do have a educational sheet for your packet too, because art is subjective and we know that everybody has different opinions, but we just want to help give you guys some guidelines on how to look at and understand what you're seeing tonight. So without further ado, Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Brill, and I live on 6th, 12th Avenue. And we are very excited to bring you this presentation tonight. I'm a member of the CAPS committee, and as Daryl said, this is a lot to absorb. So I hope I'm going to give you just a few points, and that might give you some guidelines as you're looking at these really interesting presentations. We were asked by you, very forward-thinking Board of Trustees, to help determine three public artists. One of whom will be challenged and commissioned with providing a major public sculpture at McCaslin and Main Street Roundabout in Superior. We anticipate that the final sculpture will be an artistic beacon, that it's central to our community and a physical artistic waypoint to the entrance of the Boulder Valley. The major piece of public art will create a dynamic visual experience that will enhance the aesthetic of this remarkable location as our gateway. So the committee thoughtfully reviewed, we had over 121 entries, major entries for this commission,
and we carefully studied the portfolios and the work of all these artists. The committee developed a comprehensive selection criteria, and then we entered into a direct dialogue with the finalists to really further refine their concepts. We obtained professional references, and then we continued a dialogue concerning the final submissions, and we considered the following criteria in the evaluation of public art. And I'm going to add that these are extremely broad themes. They are made to give you a frame. And of course, there's a subjective component to it, but we believe these are very important in the consideration of public art. The first one is artistic vision and the longevity of theme, which I think we have all talked about in terms of a forward vision, having the integrity to move and be thoughtful and be appreciated for many years. Secondly is the context. Is the context what it is that the vision of this community and the art is about? Next is the form. This is a huge space. How is that form going to inform that space and all of everything that's around it? The next is execution of style and balance as we look at sculpture, and the use of light to the contribution of the overall sculpture. We are in an amazing visual location. And the next is a 360-degree consideration of all the viewing angles. And finally, mass and volume within the confines of this space. I think we all see as we drive by that's an important space for an artist to have a work presented in. The three final artists who've been selected pardon me, to present to the Board of Trustees are really highly recognized and respected nationally in the field of public art. Each one of them has a very unique view, and the whole committee is really excited to be part of this process. Thank you.
So one quick thing before I forget, I'm going to pass around just a sheet for you guys to write questions and comments and notes on. And so the first one is the artist Shane Alberton, and she is with the Recite Group.
Can we just ask a couple, so just a point of order.
Yeah.
Would you prefer us to listen only, or may we ask questions of the artists, or what is your... what is your guidance to us?
What we were thinking is that they do their presentation first and then questions after. And then as things happen sometimes, and that's why I want to hand these out to you guys so that you can have, write your questions down. So the first artist presents, and the second, and then the third. And then sometimes you generate steam and you start thinking about more questions. We're hoping that the artist will be open to coming back and having questions asked if there are more questions at the end.
Back this evening.
This evening, yes.
And just to clarify too, the pieces that they're presenting to us, are they the actual proposals for this site?
Yes.
Okay.
These are
versus conceptual or something like that. So these are their actual proposals.
They're actual proposals
for this site.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Okay. And then Shane.
Hello, I'm Shane Albritton, and I'm here representing Recite Studio, which is myself and Norman Lee. First, I'd like to say thank you for this opportunity. It's very exciting to create a proposal for the McCaslin Roundabout. A little bit about Norman and myself. We began our creative careers as museum designers for about 15 to 20 years, where we learned a general knowledge of materials, technologies, and learn to collaborate with a multitude of specialists from various fields. So not just museum designers, but architects, lighting designers, historians, curators, etc. And because of this experience, each museum we designed was topic-based. So we don't really specialize in any material or style per se, but we focus in on the storytelling aspect of the piece. So the material will be dictated by the story that we're trying to tell. So our partners in this pursuit and all of our projects is MetaLab, an architecture firm in Houston, Texas, and they specialize in public art. And optimizing public art for installation, they've installed 70 plus works of art around the country and overseas. So this background kind of lays the foundation for how we approach public art and how we approach each of our projects. What we try to do is research and find the most compelling story that we can tell about a site-specific location. And what interests us about Superior and the story that we want to tell there is the history. How do I control this? Okay. Oh, scroll down, sorry. Okay. So our proposal for the roundabout is entitled Terra Nova. The history is a point of departure here, and it not only has a story to tell, but first experience you should have with this is something dynamic, something that activates a space, and secondly, tells a story. So it's more of a contemporary expression of the story. It's not incredible. It's not literal. Terra means earth, land, and nova is an astronomical term for the appearance of a new bright star, so kind of a burst of light. With the history of Superior, I think the coal mining industry is probably the most defining characteristic. So during the chronology of the existence of the town, from farming through the mining and to today, this moment on this chronology of the mining experience here is kind of like this nova. It's kind of like this bright new star, this thing that happened and drew people here and helped this town thrive. And although it's gone away, it is still burning. The star continues to reach into the future, and it has kind of defined the landscape and the cultural landscape and the way of life here. So this is a form that has inspired us. It's kind of exploding appearance of a bright star. So illuminated at night, it will actually appear as a very dynamic, dramatically lit star. Whoops, I keep doing that. So what really inspired us is the history. Two components, not just the industrial mine camp, but also the irrigation canals that were dug through the town in its very, very early days as a farmland. Community ditch, I think, was something that started the town, but is also active today and brings water to the town today. So it's a little bit of taking the past and connecting it to the present and also the future. So it's a poetic gesture that celebrates the history of Superior, founded as a farming settlement and then a coal mining town. So this is an image, a historical image that we found in the Superior Historian article, which was incredibly inspiring. Ribbons of water brought life to Superior. So this is one of the canals being worked on. And then the picture next to it is these canals actually ran through the mining camps. And during the summertime, the children of the coal miners would play in the ditches, and this kind of became, their community pool. I guess it was known as Big Ditch, but also Community Ditch. And then this is an image taken recently of the community ditch feeding into the reservoir. the Marshall Reservoir. Now, on the other side of that, the industrial mine camp is the prominent feature and the prominent story that we're trying to tell here as well. This is an image of the camp, late 1800s, of the 23 camp houses. And, you know, the town is trying to celebrate that and preserving one of the camp houses and using it as a museum. So I think that's another way that it is the town is celebrating that and preserving it, and so it's reaching into the future to maintain its history and tell that story. And so these two different pursuits are intertwined. Their histories are intertwined. So it's about terra, it's about man digging into the earth and controlling the earth and creating a town from it. And so as a symbol of that are the tools of the trade, the mine camp and the irrigation canals. So that's the literal sense of it. Taking these shovels, which are, you know, essentially a common shared experience. Everyone has a shovel. Everyone owns a shovel, understands what it's used for. And something we like to do often in our work is to use found objects that have a perceived history or have a perceived need or use. And so we're taking these shovels and recontextualizing them. So they can exist separately. So when you see this entire piece, separately, each shovel almost represents, a human who has carved into the earth and carved the town. And it's almost like each one has their own story to tell, and they can all stand independently. Yet when they are juxtaposed together, they are a group, they come together in harmony, and it evokes the notion of working the land and living as a community. So we found these maps that were really intriguing to us and were a very visible aid that showed exactly how these irrigation canals define the land. These are trenched from Marshall Reservoir, and they curve with the landscape of the land. And so one defines the other, and these are meandering all through Superior. And here's a coal mining map of a U.S. Geological Survey in 1997 that shows all the coal mines and the mining shafts. And you can see how it's pretty prominent throughout the city. And then I overlaid them just so I could understand how they define the landscape and the culture of Superior. And I think that, for us, was the most compelling story to tell in a very recontextualized way, something that is a contemporary expression of modern art that is also timeless but tells the story. And so from a distance, you will see this kind of explosive dynamic form as you approach as a kind of a gateway into the city. But upon closer distance, you will realize that they're actually made of shovels. So that is quite a compelling story. So this is looking west. I believe this is actually looking southwest, but so as you kind of rotate around, it transforms from every angle. It looks completely different. It's made up of the two different shovels that are intertwined. And this is a nighttime shot of dramatically illuminated, becoming an iconic and vibrant sculptural beacon to the city. And here are some lighting options we discussed at nighttime. Lighting is incredibly important, especially for a piece like this. The drama is what is really going to bring it to life. I'd like to show the video at this point. I have a video, just a quick kind of fly through that will take you around the roundabout so you can kind of see how this is changing and transforming as you go around. So if you were ever, is it just okay. So if you happen to get stuck in the roundabout, this would be your view, and it would be fun. But you can see how it's not, you know, it's not a ball, it's not spherical, it's really explosive and dynamic, and it's very informed by this idea of this kind of nova form. Let's see. Thank you. Okay. This is a aerial perspective view, so you can see how it's kind of sitting within the roundabout. While these are quite long, you know, components, they do not cross over the outside circle. They're kind of contained within the inner circle, which I believe is roughly 60 feet, this inner circle here. So then you have all of this safety zone on the outside. Here's an elevation view from two different directions, and an enlarged plan here. And I want to draw attention to this circle that's right here. This is the base plate that I'm going to talk about, the way it's fabricated. Up here on the left, so there is a very large base plate that's probably about 9 feet. This connects to roughly 10 vertical poles that will connect it to the ground. So this entire thing seems pretty precarious when you first see it, and I think that's what's so intriguing about it. But in fact, it has 10 points of contact into the ground. The engineers will tell us how deep this foundation needs to go. This would be a pier and beam system and go as deep as it needs to be, depending on wind loads and the geotech reports. So this piece these are the 10 points of contact into the base plate, which are also connected to this core, and I'll explain what this core is in a second. This entire section here would be welded and assembled in the studio and put on a truck and shipped here. This is the only piece that would have to be lifted by a crane and installed. The rest of the pieces will be assembled on site after this, the core piece. So the core itself is actually a very large spherical tank head, which is used in the oil and gas industry. So the ends of the tanks essentially are large cores that come split in half. So we would have one half of one, and inside we would laser with complete accuracy where each of these shovel assemblies would be attached. On the inside of each of the spheres, the bolts and support plates would be welded in place. So the entire inside would be just completely welded, and when both sides were done, they were welded together, sent to be galvanized with weep holes. And then those would be attached to the 10 main support columns. And this is kind of a plan of what that base would look like. And then once we got on site, we would have all of these fabricated pieces ready to go. Because they all actually fit within the circle, there would be no need to really close down traffic. It would probably take about a week of assembling these just on lifts. They would slide into their section and bolted on site. So the painting, we were recommending to paint it white. We would use industrial paint. I think it used to be powder coating was kind of the gold standard, but we have since come to understand it's very difficult to touch up once it gets damaged. And so I think a benefit of being from Houston is the oil industry. And so we use a 3-coat paint system, which is what they use on like offshore oil rigs. And that has 3 levels of industrial paint covered with a clear coat. And the clear coat would have to be reapplied every 15 to 20 years. And as far as maintenance, it could just be power washed to be clean. I think that is, we're estimating probably about 9 months from the execution of contract to complete the project. And I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from the board? Kevin? Really impressive. Congratulations. I mean, it's really unique and interesting, and this is, I've been on the board about 1.5 years, and this is already my favorite meeting, so thanks. What is the material? Did you say what the material was on for the shovel?
They are carbon steel. The poles are carbon steel. The shovels would actually be off-the-shelf shovels.
Okay.
And so we would just format them so they would slide into the carbon steel and bolt together, and then paint the whole thing.
Interesting. And then what is the overall? I missed the height. I know it was on the dimension, but I couldn't read it.
No, I think we tried to, at this stage, before having the engineer on board to stamp everything, we tried to give a bit of a range. Height, can't read it, about 18 to 20 feet in height.
Okay. And how would the lighting be accomplished? Where is the lighting sourced from?
The lighting would probably be, we would consult a lighting designer that we use on most of our projects, but I think in this case, it would probably be an off-the-shelf kind of lighting component. That we don't want in-ground lighting here in case there's ever a problem. It's easier to just use something off the shelf that will throw the right kind of light and the color-changing light that we're looking for. So it would be something above ground attached, surrounding it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other questions?
I echo Trustee Ryan's sentiments that this is really impressive, and congratulations on making it this far.
Thank you.
One of the unique things about Superior is that we have notoriously high winds. So when we invest this sort of, the resources in this sort of project, we want to make sure that it's going to be built to last.
Yes.
So what realistically do you think that a project like this, what could it sustain?
It would be engineered to sustain whatever the requirements are for the state or for the town. So I think the most comparable thing that we could describe is, a traffic light that may cantilever over multiple lanes, 30 feet and more. I think that's probably the most similar comparison we can think of. And what's hanging from those, the shovels themselves are just a fraction of the weight of what one of those traffic lights actually weighs, which is quite heavy. So I think the strength and the motion, those are allowed to move in high gusts of winds, and they're engineered to withstand specific, mile-per-hour winds. It would be the same approach to that. So if certain, and it often happens that dimensions have to shift and change, but the intent and the composition is something that we always maintain the integrity of, and we work with the engineers on how to maintain that integrity as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What kind of landscaping do you envision?
I think right now it's decomposed granite, probably, and I don't think we would really change it.
You would not have any living matter in the roundabout?
I don't think it's necessary to have anything other than the lighting.
Okay.
Yeah.
With, you said decomposed granite?
Yeah, like a decomposed granite. I think that may be what's existing there right now, like small rocks.
And I had a totally different visual when you said it was painted white, I have to admit, because I actually like to envision it in that carbon stainless sort of look. Painted white, I'm not so sure about. Explain to me why you think that's preferred over a natural state.
I think in this case, I mean, if you're going to use carbon steel, it needs to be coated with industrial strength paint to keep it from rusting. But I think aesthetically speaking, there's something about taking this shovel that is the metal, the raw metal, and recontextualizing it this way, rather than, we don't want it to feel, I don't know how to say, too folksy in a way. We don't want it to feel like an agricultural sculpture that is created. We want it to feel like contemporary expression. We want it to feel like a whole. We want the whole thing to feel like it's unified. And at night, when the lighting is changing colors, I think that will really give it its character as well. And this actually works the best. A white reflective surface actually works really well for changing color lighting. And as far as standing out in the landscape, I think that's an enhancement. I think that really helps it to stand out against the sky and against the dark background of the mountains.
If you use off-the-shelf blades for those shovels, do you risk rust?
They would either be stainless steel or aluminum. So we wouldn't risk any rust with those.
Okay. When you said the clear coat would be reapplied, it'd have to be reapplied in 10 to 20 years, is that something you then are on tap to do in the future?
We could. I mean, it depends on our contract and how our maintenance contract is written. If it is written in a way where the artist has a long-term maintenance contract, and then we would be, asked to come back and paint that, or if that's something the city can do. In this case, luckily, clear coat is not an aesthetic decision-making process, so it's something the city could do, but that's something we would also.
Right. Well, we have some black-eyed Susans out here that are now dull rather than vibrant colors, so I've actually wanted those things clear-coated again or something to bring out the luster, and I have no idea how one would go about that. So that long-term aspect is, I think, important.
I just wanted to ask why you positioned it on the roundabout the way you did, facing west, well, as opposed to when people actually approach the roundabout, they're going to be coming from the north or the south. And I just wanted to have a sense of why you positioned it the way you did.
I think the lengthier parts of it that give it this dynamic quality, we were kind of trying to contain it within the circle, so it seemed to fit the site. It seemed to make sense in the site a little bit better with this ellipse kind of form. This is our, first kind of conceptual approach to that, and that made sense when we kind of studied the map of this. But it's rotating it a bit to try and capture the best side from the heavier traffic view is something we're completely open to. I think we would just study it a little further. But that's the reason why we positioned it in this direction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I loved it when you walked in with the little model there. So the light is, and I had written down, I hope they have multiple colored lights. So let's look at that slide when you threw that up there. How would you get that vibrant differentiation of color if you've got lights sitting out and shining up into there? Is that, and you've done something like this, so you could actually get that distinct changes? Okay.
They are incredibly vibrant, especially when the sculpture itself is painted white. They just completely absorb the color because there's no other, sunlight blocking that spectrum. So
it's
yeah,
kind of like a black light kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it really does look like that.
Yeah.
And you can Google sculptures that are uplit with color changing lights, and it's remarkable. It just transforms them.
Okay. And again, I had asked, written down the question about landscaping too, because I showed you had a blank canvas or space underneath of there, but you wouldn't necessarily recommend any particular kind of landscaping around it, other than just the lighting, something that shows the lighting going up into it.
I think that would be preferred because, unless, we can discuss that, and if there was some low planting, we just wouldn't want to block like the bottom part of the sculpture because it is a cohesive whole from the top to the bottom. I mean, it's a possibility there could be something low around there.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that there
Yeah.
needs to be. I'm just,
Yeah.
I didn't know. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good, very creative.
What is the width? You said 20 feet on the height.
I think in this, well, it's actually, the length this way is close to 60, even though it's at an angle. This is 60. Is that a 60 this way? Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our next, do you mind yeah, repeat the question.
Oh. What was the question?
Oh, on the colored lights, how
Yes.
often would that be changing?
Oh, like cycling through the lights. It would be very slow, incredibly slow. Obviously we don't want to be too distracting either in a traffic circle, so there would be no quick lighting. It would be very subtle, and you probably wouldn't even see it change while you were driving down the street. Yeah.
On that aspect, for example, at Christmas. Can you, are we to assume you have picked the bright pink and the green and the yellow and the blue as the colors that you would prefer to see?
These were just colors to kind of illustrate the vibrancy of the options, and it's a full spectrum. And we've used color changing lights many times, and you can get any color that you want pretty much.
But how would that be decided upon?
Usually we're inspired by the site or by the sky or by something relevant to the story. We would probably pick from just being here or witnessing those things. But we have had people wanting to program the lighting change for holidays or events or sporting events or what have you, to express the holidays and community pride. So that's always something that's simple to program.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you all. Next up, we have Dow Bloomberg, and he comes to us from outside of Lexington, Kentucky. Yeah. Well, I can tell you a little bit about Dow while we wait. His art education consisted of a unique and healthy mix of traditional schooling and hands-on apprenticeship. He attributes his ability to work in varied techniques and styles to this form of learning. We are happy to note that this lifelong passion of sculpting went over his original profession. He was a horse trainer. Dow has completed over 200 private and public commissions and has numerous awards to his credit.
need another table?
I always need help. No, actually, this is perfect. Lift it out carefully so it won't break anything. You've done this a few times. It's like a conjuring act.
Yeah.
It's just one of the challenges visual arts is to communicate a vision that's in my head to other people who aren't there, and everybody sees things differently, and so that's just.
Dow, do you mind maybe starting at the mic, just introduce yourself,
Yeah,
your name
absolutely.
and everything, that way we can
Okay,
get...
now I'm set up.
Okay, great.
This is on. Okay, so just forward is. Okay, cool. Great. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, well, good evening. Can you hear me well? Thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Dow Bloomberg. I'm an artist originally from Los Angeles. Now I work out of northern Kentucky. As I said, it's exciting to be here, and I'm honored to be here. I'm going to break this talk down, and we don't have a ton of time, but I'm going to fly through it. I'm going to try to break it down a little bit differently than I usually do. I didn't prepare a speech or anything. I want, because the proposal I have came very organically through working with the committee, through thinking about it, looking at the site, having a lot of experience of being out here. And so I really just wanted to almost carry you guys along with the creative process as it works. So should I just begin? Okay. What I'm going to do is broke the talk down into two pieces. First, I'm just going to give a quick fly-through of some of my body of work to help you understand a little bit who I am as an artist, what my vision is. And then there are some pieces in that body of work that are relevant to this. Then there's also understanding how I conceive things and how I work, which speaks to what we're about to do. So this is again, I'm just going to fly through really quickly because we don't have much time. This was a large piece out in Salt Lake City. This piece is relevant to what I'm going to propose later, so we'll come back to it. Very unique construction technique. Really came out interestingly as you move around it. The piece almost starts to disappear and then reappear, and the light hits it in very different ways. So this is the first time I'd ever used a technique like this or seen it used, and it was really, really successful. This piece for University of Wisconsin, my first foray into stained glass and bronze, which was fascinating, and that was just unveiled this summer, and very interactive, and the moment we were finished, kids were crawling all over it and taking pictures, so that was really fun. This piece is also a little bit applicable to what we're going to discuss later. This is for a corporation up in Wisconsin. This is a herd of life-size galloping horses over at Morrison Nature Center. This is a life-size stainless steel tree, which is kinetic because each leaf is attached to a spring steel mount, so when the wind blows, the leaves shimmer. This was just a really fun maquette I did of kind of changing faces and some of the faces we sometimes hide. This is a piece I did that overlooks the World Trade Center site, overlooks Ground Zero. It's a very different technique. This is a classical bronze. This was 11/11/11 Veterans Day Parade. This piece honors America's Special Operations response to 9/11. and it does overlook the World Trade Center towers. They just had it in the movie 12 Strong. It's one of the things you'll pick up, and one of the reasons I wanted to run you through my body of work, not only to kind of bring you up to speed, but you can see I like to work in many different styles, many different techniques. Very abstract, very contemporary, very classical. And I do that because I try very, very hard to take my inspiration from the site rather than what I've done before, and then I'm going to come to your site and just tweak it a little bit. I try to come to a site with a very, very open mind and a blank artistic slate. We're just going to go fast. Down in Orlando, big flight of birds coming off a lake, about 20 feet tall. This is a performing arts center. It's a piece of Beethoven's music flying up into the air. This is a reflection piece that I love. This is life size. This is a horse drinking. And then there's his reflection cast in stainless steel below. And it's just a wonderful idea. And I didn't know if it was going to work, but it really did. This is a 2-acre Veterans Memorial site in Las Vegas. This is an overview of the site. It's huge. It has 18 figures from life and a half scale from all of our previous conflicts. It's the first one in America believed to honor the families of veterans, as well as the first one to honor nurses who've served and lost their lives in all of our conflicts. So just a quick. Now, totally different, an abstract flight of fancy for an estate in Southern California, a fountain of birds. This is one of my favorite pieces. This is an abstraction of a herd of grazing horses. This is just their top lines. And they start off out here in the plaza. There's 12 of them, and they're grazing, and they're gradually moving towards this giant wall of glass that goes into the lobby, where they actually pierce the glass, being on either side of it, and then they come into the lobby where people can intermingle with them. Okay, so that leads me to my proposal for Superior. And what I spent a lot of time in the Front Range. I have a daughter in Fort Collins. We summer here sometimes, and I wanted to, again, create a piece that felt extremely organic to the site. That just felt right, and felt right to me, and I love this opportunity because I'm in love with this area, so it wasn't hard. But one of the things, the big takeaways for me when I come here is the feeling of openness, the natural beauty, the Rockies and then the Flatirons, the sky, the wind coming off the prairie, these feelings that to me are iconic to why we love it here. To me, the piece that we put here in this roundabout has many jobs to fulfill, and it's one of the fun challenges of being a public artist. It has to obviously have practical considerations, has to be safe, has to be easily maintained, can't block, can't distract too much, can't block too many sight lines, all of these practical considerations, but it also needs to feel right. It needs to feel like it belongs. It needs to feel like it grew out of the ground. It also, to me, needs to be just a beautiful piece of art, just something that standing in front of a fine art museum anywhere in the world would be a successful piece.
You mind going back to the mic?
Oh,
we
absolutely.
have a lot of people watching this
Okay.
at home, and that picks it up better things.
So fulfill practical, practical limitations. Be a successful, beautiful piece of art that could be a standalone piece of art and feel organic to the site. Also, be instantly recognizable because the vast majority of viewers are going to be in a vehicle, moving 25, 35 miles an hour. They're going to see it very quickly. It has to make its impact, has to send its message right away. Has to be large enough to fill this space and to compete with a very open, very busy site. So all of these things come together. And then I wanted something that had a unique feel to it, just had a unique vision, kind of a forward-looking, contemporary feeling that also would be timeless, that 10 years from now, 20 years from now would not be needing to be replaced, would not feel antiquated, didn't have its roots in today's date. So those are kind of the challenges I was looking at. And so some of the pieces that came to mind when I was working with the committee was this piece here, and they very much like this composition, as do I. And the three figures pointing out seem to just flow really beautifully in a roundabout where there's never a back to the piece, where there's kind of a feeling of exultation and exuberance that I really loved. And then this compositional technique of this large piece really appealed to them as well. So I started kind of thinking of those two things together, because out here we have we have really, really big wind considerations. Does that go away? I'm not going to touch it. Okay. So we have a lot of wind considerations, and yet we want to go big. We want to fill this space. So this is wonderful because the wind is allowed to transit through it very well. So I really started putting myself in this spot and trying to feel the feelings that, communicate the feelings that, can this turn this up? Perfect. That I experience when I'm out here. And so this is a model of using the similar ring technique to that large piece. What I thought we would do is use this construction technique on a smaller scale for a figure that I'm going to show you in a moment. Many, many rings welded together, in the case of that face, thousands of rings. In this case, thousands of rings as well. Much smaller scale rings, because we're going to do a lot of compound curves and we need to wrap around curves a lot easier. But all these rings welded together form a matrix that's as strong as the thickness of the original piece. And yet, the light, the wind goes through it, and it works really, really in a unique way. These are just large pictures of the model that's next to me, so those of you can see it. Okay, so this is a very hard concept to communicate with a model. I've done my best. I was not able, on the scale that I could bring it here, to actually create some sort of mesh in that scale. So what I've done is I've made a model which is not pierced like this, but this sketch of all the images I've done conveys what the piece would look like the best. The rocks they're standing on, there's many mounting options. So I've done another rendering showing a different type of treatment. So at this point, this is just an initial concept to get an idea across how it's mounted, what it's standing on. Is it on some tiers? Is it on boulders? How is it landscaped? That's to be discussed and determined later. But each figure here would stand, there would be three figures like they're standing in the wind. Like I just think of myself standing in the wind with the sun beating down on me and the wind's flowing through these figures. They're open backed, and the rings are trailing off across behind each figure, kind of blowing off into the wind, where, like I did here, where the rings are trailing off and welded to each other and just reacting to this wind blowing through these figures. They all face out, so there's no back to the piece. Each one's finished in a different color. There'd be metallic colors, so it'd be a silver version, a bronze version, a gold version. These are gender neutral, so they'll be very stylized, more like this drawing than in the model that I made. Here's an image of the model, which we photoshopped to make it look more transparent. My mouth's going dry. The model doesn't communicate quite as clearly as the sketch does, but it shows the colors, it shows the size. Each figure stands from the ground to the top of its head about 12 feet tall, placed on any kind of a boulder or plinth or landscaping. We elevate it more and more. One of the reasons I brought that box is when I show you the model, I want you to see it kind of, and even this isn't going to be correct, kind of from the angle that a motorist would see it. This piece would never be looked down upon. So there's a figure there for scale. And again, you can see they're not pierced, but they give a sense of the wind. And you can see as it rotates how it would appear to people moving around it. This is not to scale because the image we had of the roundabout was rather difficult, and it's very interesting, but I'm not sure how that got moved off to the side. My wife did the Photoshop, and when I gave the final check, it was in the middle. But anyways, that's supposed to maybe she didn't merge it. Those familiar with Photoshop. But however, that just gives you a rough idea. And again, there's just gravel here. We didn't put any landscaping, because again, that all can be needs to be designed and dictated. And I was unsure of. So, whatever we do needs to feel right for other landscape and hardscaping that the city designers have done. So for me to come in and say, oh, I was going to wild pink plinth, no. It needs to feel like other things in the area. So there's many, many, many layers of meaning to this piece that I came up with, and some of my assistants came without me telling them. I love a piece that allows the viewer to bring out of it, well, with art. We bring to a piece of art our life experience. To me, this is just a very unique, very beautiful piece. It feels like the Front Range. It feels like the wind. It feels like somebody just loving being outdoors, like loving where they are. There's also, to me, a message of inclusion and harmony and each figure is made up of many, many thousands of rings, but together, in harmony, they form a beautiful, beautiful image. It's viewable from all angles. Then, I'm not sure what my next slide is. Here's the same sketch with just a different kind of a treatment. Height is our friend. Bane of a public artist's existence is always that balance between budget, site, and what we can give you for the budget. I've tried to give a lot for the budget, but that's always what limits, how big and how structural we can go. By, for example, raising this figure up, berming, just with some earthwork, berming it up, tamping it down, putting a little something on top, we can gain 3-4 feet very inexpensively, very easily. Piece doesn't really need to be much taller than that after spending much of the day there. So I didn't intend this, but as I said earlier about how I approach a job, I do approach it with a blank slate, and the pieces, if it works the way it's supposed to, they do seem to grow very organically. A second version of this came to mind as I was working with these models, and I was trying to figure out how to form these models. We were trying to make holes; it just wasn't working. Working, and as I was working with it, an idea started to form. Like I said, an alternate version, same composition, same size, same scale, completely different treatment of the figure. And I thought, I'm going to try to make a model of this because it could just be one of my crazy ideas. Doesn't work out. I made the model. I loved it. I didn't love it more or less than the ring version. I loved it equally. And I thought, what the heck? I'll make a model. I'll make an image. I had this image of a figure in the same pose, same thing, and the wind is blowing these pieces of silk fabric against the body. It's an exploration of negative space. There's no figure there. The only figure is delineated by the drapery itself. This would be cast, this would be sculpted in a more classical way. I would sculpt this. It would be cast in thick aluminum and then painted different colors. Each figure could have a different color. I don't know what we could do with the colors. Our minds can go wild, but it was just such an interesting vision to me, like this tapestry. And I started having the idea of a tapestry of all the colors of the rainbow coming together, clinging to this figure in this beautiful pose, creating the beautiful figure. And again, I thought it was very unique, huge splash of color. Could be, again, it could be the different metallic colors. It could be primary colors. Each figure could have a different combination of colors to ever change. So, again, I thought we would just make the model, make a quick image of it, and because it just seemed too interesting to not bring up. But it struck me, both ideas struck me as extremely unique and visionary. And like I said, I think something that would be in place in front of any fine art museum anywhere. Let's make sure I haven't missed anything before I open for questions and answers. But both would be extremely easy to maintain. Both would be as vandal resistant as you're going to get. And like I said, I think they don't block the cross views of the roundabout. They are viewable from 360 degrees. They're large. They're extremely unique. And to me, they just feel like they should be there. Okay, so questions.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Questions from the board?
Thank you again for coming tonight. Tell me about the significance of the 3 mediums for the ringed version, the gold, silver, and the bronze.
There's a few. I think, firstly, it's just more interesting than having all 3 figures one color to me. But then there's more subtly, I love the idea of Colorado, the history is just one race after the other coming and going. The Native Americans, and then Spaniards, and then Euro-Americans from the east, and then now the mix. And wherever you go, you see this blending. It's people from all over the world come here for various reasons, for work, for recreation, to enjoy the beauty. It's also so I love showing, just subtly, using the natural colors of metal, just some different hues. I love the message, especially today, of, harmony. Those 3 figures need each other to stand up. One of those figures is just going to fall forward. But when we join all 3 together, it makes a very strong, triptych, triangular structure. So I think subtly, to me, those were the motivations behind going with three colors. And the same with the tapestry version.
Thank you.
Super impressive.
Thank you.
Just really amazing.
Thank you.
Talk to me about the fabrication. Where would it be fabricated and installed, and would it be disruptive when it was in place? How much of it is built offsite?
Yeah. Those are great questions. I would fabricate the entire piece in my studio, northern Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati, Ohio, and bring it out in sections. So we'd completely assemble it there, then cut it apart, Probably each figure would be its complete body, probably not with the arms on. Bring each figure out here, have a staging area, weld each figure back together, and then we don't need to close the intersection or anything like, I mean the roundabout or anything like that, but block it off for safety reasons, the roundabout itself. Come in, erect them all, weld them, do the welding, weld them together. So they're prefabricated, bring it in sections, put them together in the spot. Everything can be self-contained within the roundabout. So crane, scaffolding, that kind of stuff, all be inside. Put a construction fence or barrier, whatever is needed for Department of Transportation or whatever, and safety issues. But do as much as we can at home. Bring it here ready to pop together. Probably take 3-4 days, 2-3-4 days, probably. Have all the landscaping done beforehand, so that's happening. Working with landscape people, local contractors, whatever, while the fabrication in the studio is happening. So things are happening at the same time. This is all ready. This comes, puts on top of it.
Okay. 2 more quick questions. How long would it take to fabricate approximately?
That's a good question. The ring version would take longer than the tapestry version. As you can imagine, it's a lot of welding. So you're probably looking 6 to 8 months, I would imagine. The tapestry version probably 5-6, approximately.
Okay. And do you see this being lit? And
absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, and thank you. That's something I didn't bring up. Both these versions would light beautifully. The metal version light beautifully, just naturally, doesn't need a lot. This catches the light, creates a lot of shadow. Very, very interesting. Uplight it so we're not blasting, drivers. That would light very, very easily. You can imagine the thing would just light beautifully. Whatever colors we went with. So yeah, and the slight lean out makes it very easy for some, lighting to still hit the front the way we would want. Anybody else? Yes. Uh-oh. What was that?
I'm trying to figure out where to start here.
Please, you're making me nervous.
No. This is good.
Okay.
To render me speechless is sort of a good thing.
Yay.
I can say that. I'm so glad you brought both concepts. Thanks for going to the extra effort, because it has made me just creatively think of this in a totally different way. For example, where they join hands, if all done in metallic, how interesting it would be to borrow the color of the hand you've joined. So you've exchanged color.
Exactly. Yep.
To show.
You got it. Yep.
And on this person, I probably wouldn't cover the face with the fabric because it's a little claustrophobic or whatever, but I can see it borrowing the ringed face. And then that evolved in my mind to actually taking mostly the rings with a swath of cloth, just sort of having caught part of it, and that would help with the gender neutral sort
You
of
climbed
thing.
in my head, because
So
the same things happened to me after
So,
I saw them.
I know I'm not the designer here, but the great thing about it is how this has just peppered my mind with a lot of different ways.
Can I interject something real quick?
You could play
because
with that.
I don't want to forget, because you bring up a great point. When I say these things evolve organically, this is exactly what I'm talking about. How I work is I think ultimately the artist needs to have their concept, but I like this kind of conversation, helps inform me. Those aren't final decisions. If something like this, or if I'm selected, I go back to the drawing board and I start fine tuning. We go back and forth, ideas come, and then it comes like that. So it's not has to be this, has to be that. This is a starting point. So what
And
you
then,
just said can continue.
A place where I'm coalescing on a particular thing is the base. We are the flat irons. This metal on top of stone, or whatever, just seems type of balance into the flat irons, the Rocky Mountains, and all them. You see how we use boulders and all
Yeah, and
that
that's what
around
this
here.
is kind of meant.
Yeah.
I couldn't angle them, but that's kind of
Yeah.
what it's meant to.
And then I think that's
respond
very
to.
conducive with landscaping, which then softens, as well. So anyway, good work.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. There's little tweaks on both that can be made, and like the face and a combination of the two. Maybe where there's some open areas and there's rings behind it, all kinds of.
Especially translucence.
Yep. Well, it creates a translucence. Now the rings, like you
Yeah.
saw with that face, that's why I brought that up. When I saw that face, it did the weirdest thing to me. I drove all the way around it, and I kept looking at. And we're so used to seeing computer-generated images in the movies that we just don't even we just take it for granted when somebody disappears. But when you're actually seeing it in real life, that was the weirdest thing, because as I would move, it would come and go, and it was very odd. Okay, I'm sorry. Go on. Next question. I know we have people
Anyone have
waiting.
anything else?
I just want to make a comment. I'm sorry, this is going to be a little trite, but I'm blown away by this.
Thank you.
Because one of the things that drives me crazy and also I love about Colorado is the wind.
I know what you're going to say.
And I just think this is amazing the way you've captured that. I like either version. I have some concerns about the fabric one because of the face being covered. I grew up in the South, and we're always sensitive about that.
I agree.
So that would be my only sensitivity, that if there was a way that it feels a little superhero-y to me right now, but if I had to pick between the two, I actually love the color.
I think
the second one.
Those points you make resonate with me too. And I think there's things to explore that could address them, and most likely would work. One of the things, but I was not able to do it in a way to bring it out here, is I think they should be longer.
Yeah.
Blowing back further, and we get away from. And then the face could be. There's lots of options for the face that can get away from that claustrophobic feeling or that, KKK feeling or whatever people bring into it. We want to avoid that. So there are things to explore. I think it's worth exploring. If there's interest, rather than just saying no, I think, spend a week on the drawing board and come up with ideas and see if they work or not.
And the last comment, I really like the fact it feels like you designed it to be in a roundabout, as
Thank you.
opposed to being something that you approach from one side or the other. So I really like
Thank you.
that part of it. It's beautiful.
I have one more question about the rings.
Yes.
So the model that you brought tonight, is that representative of the size of the ring that would actually be in the installed piece, or is that smaller?
These are a little bit smaller. The rings on that big face were 4, 5, and 6 inches. They can't be that big because we couldn't delineate any of that. So we're probably looking at 2-inch. These are 1-inch rings. Probably 2-inch rings, and there's probably 2 sizes of rings. Just give it a little bit more of a natural feel and allow us to do what we have to do to get. Because every curve we add adds structure. There'll probably have to be some subtle structure inside, in the back. But the more curves we can add, lines between legs, that beefs the thing up. So probably twice again as big as this, but some small ones as well. Some of that will be dictated once I start, and we start experimenting with the tightest curves. Now that I'm an expert, having done one, we'll know what size it is. So the size of the ring will kind of be dictated upon us by the piece.
And those rings they're steel?
In the model, they're steel, and I would cast them out of the same alloy that I cast that face out of, and that was a aluminum magnesium alloy, which is from the aircraft industry. Extremely corrosion resistant, very light, very strong. So very, perfect for what we want to do and great for your maintenance people. Because you guys have to take care of this thing and live with it.
Okay, thank you.
One more thing. The coolness of the rings and whatnot is the fact when you see them from behind, they're equally artistic as when you see them from the front. So we'd have to figure out how to achieve that from the back as cool as from the front.
Yeah, and again, those are discussions we have and I play with, but probably I think we should probably go the opposite direction and go kind of subtle, maybe dark, because then you don't want, if you're looking at one, you're always seeing the back of one, and we don't want it to kind of fade away. So I'm seeing this one, and it's not competing with, like if you tried colors in the inside of that far one, maybe you're trying too hard.
But I love that idea of the longer fabric.
Yeah, and I think they could even touch, which would help us structurally too, and that could have a lot of meaning as well. So this is just all kinds of, it's a germ of an idea. It can go in lots and lots of different directions. But I've never seen anything like either of them, which I love. As you can tell, I'll try anything. If I have the idea, we'll figure out how to make it, which gives us a ton of freedom when I come to a site. It's not like, oh, I only know how to do this. So no, we'll figure it out, and we've done it, but I've never seen these things. I've never seen anything like them before, which I love to do. As an artist, I love to be surprised. I love seeing something new. I love being shown something in a unique way, like that reflection piece. I had never seen that. And when you do that, you create a piece that really keeps growing on people who will drive past this every day. It will always have new meaning. It's not a simple piece where they say, oh, that's awesome. It's a bear. Or it's an elk. Wow, I've seen it one time. I know what it's going to look like. This always is changing, day and night. Every time you move around it, it's different. It's engaging. There's layers of meaning. So to me, those are all home runs for this type, for public art, We're creating for the public, and I want to bring fine art to people, in the communities.
Okay, Rita?
Thank you for your presentation. I don't really have a question, but I have a comment based on everything that you've been saying. I like art, too, that brings the community, the life force of the community, rather than, ooh, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Sculptures a lot of times can be kind of cool and exciting, but I want people to, I'm not saying people, I like to be able to look at it and say, wow, look at all the interesting pieces to this, and you have a lot of interesting things here. So, and it's the life of the community. It's a person or a spirit, which is different than just an object that isn't really defined by the life force of the community itself. So I like this one. I like the idea that Sandy was talking about of taking a portion of this. I looked at this and I thought of Kachinas and Southwest.
Yep.
So I didn't know if that, but I like the color too, as Sandy Hammerly was saying. But I like the idea of making a combination and growing this organically, like you said, to fit the space. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Love it.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Break down my traveling circus. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you.
So So third up, we have Tim Upham, and he is from Fort Collins, and he works in collaboration with his brother Rick. Together they create unique site-specific public art for locations around the world. When creating site-specific projects, many factors exist, such as cultural, they take in the environment, agriculture, history, the list goes on, but the concept is usually born from a combination of these factors and the emphasis that they play in regards to the site. Tim has been involved in creating award-winning public art since 1994. So we welcome Tim.
Mic here or over there? Oh, okay.
There's a speaker on the table there too, so probably that little.
I will once I set up everything. Thanks.
We can turn the lights down so we can see that.
Sure, thanks.
Welcome. If you want to start, maybe just start with a brief introduction on yourself.
Anytime. Good evening. Thank you very much. I'm Tim Upham. I'm a site-specific sculptor. I'm out of Fort Collins, Colorado, born and raised in Denver. I want to thank you for allowing me to present this evening. It's a very exciting project. This isn't just a roundabout, it's the roundabout. This is big. It's a double lane. It's big. It's very big. It's 90 feet just in the dirt, the soil area. Anyway, I'd like to just start off showing some past projects, but, you know, some of my work, and then some dichroic samples, and then I have packets, so I can hand out packets, and then I've got a number of samples to set up, and I thought I'd do that while everybody kind of read through some packets. This is for City of Lakewood. This is called Dance of the Indian Paintbrush. It's stainless. It's glass and rusted steel and cobblestone, and it's kind of innovative. I don't know of anybody else doing it, around the world, but it's using. You've got about a 3/4 inch gap when it's actually crushed glass, and it's the two layers are a tempered glass. There you kind of get the close up of that. This is for St. Joseph Hospital in Denver. This is 32 feet high. This is also using rusted steel, stainless steel, and the glass panels. And this is all about history, the Four Sisters. It's titled Four Sisters. This is my brother and his shop in Fort Collins. There's just installation shot. This one I'm showing, now this is actually 3-form polycarbonate, but I'm using it just to show this for the stainless steel standoffs that you see here. This is on the Kenai Peninsula College in Alaska. This is Indiana State University. This is another glass technique. This is actually putting like glass gems in between stainless steel expanded metal. And that sycamore leaf is one of their images, and blue and white. Also, I just want to point out on these wall washers, what you see here is some wall washers, and that's going to come up later on. This is at the Pace Center in Parker. Also glass, stainless steel, and rusted steel, and buff sandstone, called nucleus. It's at the main entrance. Again, some of the close shot of just some of the glass work. I love this shot. They sent this. I had installed that and hadn't put the stone in yet, and they sent this. I said, you got to send me another one now that the stone's in. This is called Sunrise. It's the Aurora Municipal Center, and it's stainless and laminated, 3/8 laminated glass, textured glass with precast concrete. There's the night shot. It has 1,200 solar lit LEDs that run the length of that. There's the day, night. It's 68 feet long, 26 feet high, and 18 feet wide. Just for reference, this one was like $230,000 in 2008. Just an installation shot. This one, I'm showing this slide just to show you some past projects and the LEDs, use of them. LED backlit, LED wall washer, LED uplights, and the 1,200 solar lit. We'll be talking probably about the LED wall washers and the LED downlights. This is a very poor photograph of some dichroic glass and another one. Sorry about that. I'm just showing this is not my work. This is just some work I've been doing the public art for about 24 years and glass since about 2004. But I have never done dichroic, and I'm very excited, and I just thought this would be an excellent project to jump in. This is an architectural application. This is not my work. None of these shots are. But I just wanted to show you something from the exterior of what it possibly, looks like, because it's an incredible medium. I have samples, but it's out in the sunlight. It's unbelievable. This is a piece not mine. This is in Vancouver, but that's all dichroic glass, and you can see that just the difference of what the sun plays and where you're at. That's just a night. This is not my project, just an example of what it looks like at day. And then here's my project, and it was just a close-up shot, and it's ribbons of water. It's the 36 feet high, 30-foot diameter dichroic glass, stainless steel, rusted steel, and LEDs. And that's it in the roundabout. Now I'd like to set up a bunch of samples, so I just be as quick as I can Okay. And design team? Yes. Does it show up?
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. Like wherever you are, it's changing. It's amazing. And also goes to show you can do it from like, you know, it's just, I don't know, look at material. Good have to have It is incredible. Where do I start? It's always a process. I think for me, it's about telling a story. And as you can see in the portfolio, I go to history. When I start my research, it's usually where the first place I go is history. And I was reading the Superior Historian. And it was funny because it was one that just popped out in that 2-page supplement that's in there. It mentions McCaslin, Boulevard like 3 times in there, and I'm like, sometimes you know when it hits and it just feels right. It was like ding, ding, ding. So it was all about the ribbons of water, which is, for me, in a real basic layout of the project is the 8-inch by 8-inch rusted steel is just the coal shaft from the mining. Then this is the new downtown Superior. It's the future, and it grows due to the ribbons of water. You've got Coal Creek and Big Ditch and Little Ditch, and so that's where and it just felt right. I don't know if you can see all this. Any questions? I'm good on fast on the feet, but I'm trying to gather myself.
The lighting, could you talk about the lighting too?
Sure.
How this would be lit?
Yes. I'm thinking 4 wall washers and then downlighting. This is kind of new because the last we talked, we were talking about some strip LED lighting, whereas I had talked to LED designer and he had suggested, say, having something coming down lighting because of the spill would actually then help light the stainless steel swirls. So this is like you would have an LED fixtures on top of each one of these. Then the 4 wall washers you would have like 1, 2, 3, 4 on the back, or just all the way around. But that's kind of the basic idea. I don't know if that's making any, but that's somewhat a very simple idea of the layout on that.
Yeah, that down light, I think, would really help add significant detail.
You get a lot of spill, especially, say, in that center area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this one, when I first saw it, I don't normally go do proposals for RFPs. It's a lot of work where you're putting the entire proposal together. And I saw this one, and I was just blown away by the roundabout, and I spent September putting something together. And it was funny, like I said, as I started the research, it just clicked. And I thought, that's the story I want to tell.
Tim, in Boulder, they just did an underpass baseline just east of Broadway, and there's a big triangular piece of glass, I think it is. I'm wondering, are you familiar with that location? And I'm wondering, is it the same glass that you're talking about?
I'm not familiar with
Okay.
that piece of art, but it's in,
Okay.
it's off of 36.
It's on, 36 and baseline.
Huh, and it's a triangular
Yes.
shape? No, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
it's a nice piece.
On the underpass on baseline?
It's next to the underpass, and
Got it.
when you're describing this glass, it makes me think of the same material, which it's always intriguing driving by it because it always looks
changing.
different, and
It's
so I'm thinking
always-
it probably is the same material.
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
So Tim, a question I have.
Yes.
As I'm looking at it up here in relation to the street,
Yes.
it seems high.
It's very high, it's 36 feet.
So, landscaping to me is going to be very important. The little shrubs shown here, to me, don't do anything for it. I know they're not what you're planning, but landscaping is going to be very important because I want my eye to go upward.
Absolutely.
But the question is it too high off the ground for the enjoyment of that traffic? I see this being beautiful from more of a distance.
And that's what I agree.
Right. But you have to make it also work from up close. And that may be the landscaping. Just address that.
No. And number one, we could go lower. It's just that most of the public art, I try to keep everything at least say 10 feet off the ground for public safety. The nice thing about this, it definitely could be lowered because it is such a visible area. I don't see a lot of vandalism or climbing on it with kids just because it is so visible, to get in there and to play around. To also address the height issue, I felt exactly the same way. If I was designing something for, say, the roundabout that's just to the east of that I see as a more pedestrian level. Something that as I'm driving by, it's a one-lane roundabout. I see that as something I want to see a little more close, a little personal. What I liked about this one is it's a gateway. You will see this from, and that's what I was thinking as what I thought when I said, go big, go bold. Whether you're coming from the south and you're coming off that hillside, you're going to see this. Or whether you're coming from the north and headed south, you're going to see this. And another thing that I've seen, like even coming in tonight, especially tonight with the headlights and all that, there is a lot of visual distraction at that lower level as you're approaching both ways. It is sign after sign after sign after sign. I get it, you need them there, it's code, but everything up to, say, 7 feet, whatever, it is a lot of signage until you get actually right in the roundabout itself. And at that point, to be very direct, my emphasis was for the approach. It was not to be in it. For drivers, number one, they're never looking to the left. In a roundabout, you're looking straight ahead or to the right, straight ahead or to the right. You're not looking off to your left. So my emphasis really was to the approach. It's not in the roundabout itself. But yes, and then landscaping, I know it's open right now, but I see stone, large stone, and I didn't have it on this one just because I felt like it was distracting. Not only that, people that I'd shown it to got a big kick out of just seeing the reflection. Not that anybody's going to see that, but just out in the sunlight when you have it lit, it's incredible. Anyway.
We'll address that question of reflection off the stainless. In the bright sunlight during the day, will this make anybody blind?
No, the stainless won't. But the dichroic glass is very reflective. But my thought on that was, since I'm so high up, it's no different than passing a 2-story or 3-story building that it's all glass, a face to it. So, and this is just an example, and I'd like to hand this around.
Sure.
Just because this is the 3-inch, that's the 3-inch stainless. That's this. And it just gives you an idea of kind of, when you say something to a committee or something, and you talk about 3-inch, they're like, Jim, it's a 90-foot diameter roundabout. What are we talking 3 inches here and there? But it does have the impact. And that's the texture, which you see right there.
Tim, closer to the mic, please.
Closer. Sorry.
So,
Can hear this.
is this pipe shape, or are you saying this will be a flat material on the ribbon?
What you have there is a sample of big ditch and little ditch. So they're the 3-inch pipe. This is Coal Creek. This is 18-inch and by 3/16 stainless. Okay. And that will also have the same texture as that. Okay. And no, it's not that reflective. It's not at all. A lot less than any chrome or anything else on a vehicle.
If you could speak to how this would be maintained and weathering, and you know, how would it get cleaned, things like that, wind.
Got it. I don't see any maintenance on it. I've written in there that it talks about penetrol. Somebody can put penetrol if they want on it. I haven't used penetrol on any of the rusted steel projects that I have here in Colorado. We're thinking of a half-inch wall, according to my engineer, which would be, would eventually go in maybe over 200 years. And if you think I'm kidding, look at any of the steel that you still find in mines or in Colorado out there. It's a half-inch thick wall. So I don't see any maintenance. The only reason the penetrol sometimes looks nice because it just makes it darker. But after a couple of years, I put penetrol, I rushed the whole rust look to the whole thing by spraying it on by the salt and anyway, a spray. I get the rust going, then I put the penetrol on it. It gets that dark look right off the bat, so you're not looking at steel. No maintenance on the stainless. I don't foresee any cleaning because we're vertical. Like you're not going to have, I think, bird droppings or anything like that on it as far as the glass is concerned. So I don't see any maintenance issues.
How about wind?
And it's big wind around here. Yeah. We know. I can tell you this, out of the 24 years, engineers, you have to have them do it. They look at worst case scenario, and I know my engineer from past projects, the first thing he does is he'll just think of it, he'll think of this as one huge solid sail. He doesn't go saying, oh, well, what's the wind resistance here or here? He'll look at it as, what if this is just one big sail? And so I don't know if you understand, but the engineers, they go to a maximum. They add snow, ice, wind, guys climbing or whatever, and then multiply it by 3. And that's the way it has to be done. That's just the way it is. It's their name on the, their signature on the stamped drawings.
So this dichroic glass, is it tried and tested? I mean, how does it perform in the elements, and does it get pitted by the weather and dulled by the elements? And it's glass, and so it, you can look at cathedrals in Europe that are 400 years old, and they're glass. What's amazing about that technique there is it even has its color still. And so, yeah. What does dichroic mean?
It's what is it? It's a double two. I should know this. It's like the 2-color or double color.
In one piece of glass.
It was, yes, and and it's a metal oxide that's actually attached. Now there are 2 different techniques to that. You can either dip it in a metal oxide, or 3M creates the film. For instance, that is out of shot glass that's done in Germany with an office in New York. Then the other technique is the 3M film, and samples are from Gold Ray out of Calgary. And I'm just now communicating with, what is it, the name, but it's John Blasey glass. It's dichrolam. And what this is you're talking about 2 quarter-inch layers that are laminated. So you've got a half-inch thick piece of glass, and it's very durable. Because you have to. I mean, because of hail or anything else, you've got to be able to withstand whatever nature can throw out. And yes, it is used. You asked, did I have, has it been used? And yes, I mean, for the architects are using it all over for exterior applications.
So thanks. So I appreciate your comment earlier around RFPs can be tough, and so thank you for responding to the RFP. This is really amazing. It really just speaks to me. I love the concept of the ribbon of water. I think it looks like it fits really well within the roundabout. I love the size of the structure. Talk to me about the colors that are selected. You know, why those? They're unique. Tell me a little bit about the colors on the glass and what you're thinking there.
It's funny. There are only two options
Yeah.
in one. Like John Blasey, they call it red or green. What are the other ones? Everybody, you know, the manufacturers have their own name, but what it basically comes down to is just really two basic colors, but you have a difference in transmission as opposed to reflective. And in that, you have the entire spectrum even bouncing around
I see it
on
now.
that.
Right.
So it's funny, you're so limited in the sense that it's like, this is your option right here. But what you get is the entire
the spectrum, right?
spectrum.
Right.
You know who, NASA was the one who actually came up with this, and it was used for the space helmets, for the reflective, just because they had to have something for that radiation out in space. But it's very high-end, high-tech, but it is incredible. It's kinetic, it's dynamic, it's always changing, no matter where you are. The time of day it's changing. You step, well, you folks can see it. It's just, you step here, it's different. It's different. It's like, bam.
It's great. Beautiful.
It's incredible.
Now, the project I mentioned earlier in Boulder, I just looked it up, and it is
It is
glass.
dichroic.
Yes, and it's amazing. The images here, it really doesn't do it justice. When you see it in the sun, it is. It's you kind of have to see it to believe it.
Thank you.
Really,
I agree with that,
it's
because
really
until
awesome.
in one of the meetings, you know, is to take people outside and have that sunlight, and it just, you go boom. And you just walk around this thing. So, you know, I know that it's open. This thing could definitely go lower to the ground. I was only thinking from a public safety standpoint of trying to keep this off, but this can also be squeezed, you know, down, and this can be lowered too.
I actually was gonna, you probably have never had a perm.
A perm?
Have you?
No. What are you suggesting? You don't like my hair?
But I have. And when they go wrong, they really go wrong. And so I actually saw that flat piece of metal looser on there, not so perfect, like a tight perm. I saw it sort of looser on it. But it's...
Oh, for the swirl.
For the swirl.
For the large swirl.
Yeah.
I think it is, I'm just trying to follow, say, the design of the roundabout. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Great suggestion.
You don't have to follow it. It's
No.
just...
What else?
Any other-
You know what's frustrating is I'll walk out of here and I'll go, you forgot to talk about this, or you forgot to talk about that, or anyway.
Well, you brought a
Well,
great
speaking
model.
of that, I do.
Yes, good.
You really did, as part of the introduction, you did not necessarily speak to the ribbons of water, and so it's helpful to have this. And that's really, I saw it, and it spoke to me in a certain way, and then after I read what it sort of inspired you with the coal shafts, and it really, so it's really very, it's an excellent piece, and really tying our history and our future together. It's really very nice.
Thank you. And this is why I love the questions. It's something else I didn't think about. As you're looking at the map, one thing that struck me, because when I first started doing the research, it was like, and then the gentleman was talking about McCaslin Boulevard. Well, you look at the map, and I was like, wow, it surrounds this roundabout. You have Coal Creek just to the north, and you have Big Ditch and Little Ditch just to the south. So you have this roundabout, and all three of these ribbons of water are like right there. And I think that one was like, bam, you know. And let's face it, it's you know, the West, it's Colorado. Water is everything. It is everything. So I had this like real basic look to the, if I looked at it like from a child point of view, which I'm very good at since I have a child mind, and I finally learned about 20 years ago to take advantage of that and just run with it. It's a garden. I look at the stems, I look at the flowers, and they're allowed to grow due to the water.
So in your presentation, do you have the night view on that you can put up on the screen? You have it in here.
No, and you know what, that is, I mean, it's a night view, but it doesn't represent what the lighting effect would be. This technique is much better. That one, you know, what I'm doing is I'm just pumping a lot of light on it. But I think this one actually is, don't go out on me now, is just a little more representative of what reality would be. You know what I mean? It's like, because, and I like the idea of the downlight because, again, it spills and will help whatever, you know.
And you can achieve that without there visually being a lamp at the top.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is 3-inch stainless up here. I have more than enough support and room to do
just something that's sort of hidden in there?
Absolutely. Okay. And I was thinking, I've already been starting to think about that would be like a stainless cross just to protect the features, the LED features. And my lines are running down and the drivers are down on the ground in a box. I can show you guys. I think that's like, anyway.
Those lights that you're putting at the bottom, however, can't affect the drivers.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
no.
You know that.
Right. And that's why they are
Right.
shooting up at this angle. They're called wall washers. And then your down lights are straight down. But true. No, you can't. Nice thing about this roundabout is there is a space. My challenge is to try to make as big an impact as I could for that 90-foot diameter area. So it is a 30-foot diameter, 36 feet high. It doesn't have to be that high. And there's still room to not affect traffic by anything, because you can get a crane in there. My brother's truck and welding truck and trailer. I work with my brother. I've worked in collaboration with my brother for, 24 years in public art. He has the welding shop, and it's a great relationship. I always tell people our working relationship is somewhere between Cain and Abel and click and clack. So it's like, and he can throw me out at any time, and so but it's family. So that's right. That's right.
Very nice.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If we just hold it in the other room, then I can back up over there.
Hey, Daryl, do we want to have you or someone kind of speak to maybe next steps and kind of the process from here, just to kind of close out our presentation?
I don't think there's artists out there waiting.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask, if you guys had additional questions. I know sometimes, like I said, you go through the process and, okay. So then the next steps really, and I don't think we have a date on the calendar. We are meeting on Thursday as a committee to discuss all the nuts and bolts. I mean, we've gone through and done our research in terms of interviewing their references and things like that, and looking at their budgets and their statements and all of the whole package of not just what we see tonight, but everything about their art and how it will come to fruition here. So we are meeting on Thursday. We want to set up a board meeting. I think you're not going to be here that March meeting. So we just need to put together, we'll have our recommendation ready for you guys whenever we can get on the, into a meeting to get it done.
Okay. Kevin. A question, then a comment. The question, with the roundabout, they had some issues around the utilities, and I was surprised by some of the, maybe not the size, but we might just want to make sure that we can come to, we may need to go down significantly 5-10 feet on that. So, Alex,
those are great questions. Alex has actually sat in on conversations, and with this particular one we've looked at, and they've talked about how you would engineer, because I guess there's a sewer pipe that runs right down the center of there as well. So those are absolutely questions that are
Let me just make a comment. I know there's a lot of committee members here. I commented personally around that when there was an RFP, sort of my anxiety around an RFP that you see often for street type projects, and this was artists. The fact that you have attracted the type of artists that we've seen tonight, how well the RFP was done, how quickly it was done, that it's in their budget. You guys, the entire committee has just done a tremendous, tremendous job. I'm just amazed how well this went. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, three very good choices.
I know it's going to be hard.
And I'm sure it was hard to get it to 3.
But the beauty is we have a list of 121 artists to, hopefully pull from for all of the other parks and installations that we want around town. So.
Well, great job up to this point. Can't wait to see where we go from here. So.
Well, wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming and all of your work. We appreciate it. Okay, well that.
So a question to the board. At the earliest, they said they're meeting on Thursday. Clint's out of town on the 12th. So that leaves us to the first meeting of April at the earliest to discuss this. What does that agenda look like?
Well, in question, is Chris back for March?
Chris is back on March 12th.
Okay, so I'm the only one gone. Okay.
So, but we all want to be here, right, for this? I think so.
I would, but I also don't want to hold up.
Well, the question is, we could also have a meeting March 19th on the off Monday to just have this on the agenda, and they can present their recommendation before us and be here to answer all the questions about references and construction and all that kind of stuff. If we wanted to do that on March 19th rather than wait to April 12th or 14th.
I'd rather not push it out either.
Right. So is everybody available?
I can't commit to that, unfortunately.
It doesn't have to be a Monday. Any other time in there?
I think with my schedule and Chris's schedule, it could be, I don't want to speak for Chris, but I know how buried he is. So, I mean, I agree, time is important here. We're going to be looking at it's 5-6 months fabrication. I'd love to see something this summer, fall, and do not want to get into the next season of weather. So I'd like to find a way to make this happen March 5th. So.
Or 12th.
12th, excuse me.
I would say let's keep this on for March 12th. Let's stay on that schedule. I will definitely stay engaged in the process and send my comments in. I don't have veto power over this board, so I'm one of 7 votes, and I want to see this move forward. So,
is it on the March 12th agenda?
I do not. I don't know. I'd have to look. I don't remember.
I don't think it's on there right now.
So just understanding of expectation of the board and process. So the expectation is for CAPS to select the final artist and for staff to negotiate a contract with them and then bring that forward to the board?
No.
Okay.
CAPS to make a recommendation.
Okay.
And the board to.
So we wouldn't have anything for you to vote on the 12th anyways. Because you would need to okay a selection, and then we would have to go back and work out an agreement with them.
We would okay a selection.
That's what you would do on the 12th and then come back with the contract
So
Right,
in
right,
April.
right.
Nothing could start before the 9th anyways, April 9th.
But at least then by early March or the first part of March, we'd know, collectively, we'd all know who the artist is. We can then start working the contract with the artist and get started on the process. That would be, I think, I'm watching the CAPS people nod. And I'm expecting you're gonna give the recommendation to us based on everything you heard and saw tonight. And then I can't imagine there'd be too much other than us accepting that recommendation. You know, unless we go, what? I mean, I don't know. But the expectation is that we're gonna rely as a board
Well.
on their recommendation and not
Maybe.
totally go away from them.
Never
No.
done that before.
Well, okay, well then
I
don't
don't
let
think
them
you
make a
should miss this.
recommendation. Maybe we
I'd
should
rather
just
wait
March
till the
12th
first
and have the board select.
meeting.
I don't think that serves any purpose. I want the CAPS committee to recommend, just like you came and gave the 3 artists, great selection of the 3 artists, and I'm gonna rely on all your expertise to give us a reason why you think your selection is the best one, and hopefully we'll agree.
Okay, no pressure there.
Yeah, the pressure's over here.
That's right. All right, any closing thoughts? All right, thanks again for all of your work. Appreciate it. All right, we'll take a short break before.
You want to go in?
Or go.
You go in executive session first?
No, we're taking a break.
Okay.
Okay, 10-minute.
We can't take a break once we're in.
Okay, 10-minute recess.
Sorry.
Okay.
That was fun.
Right, we are on to agenda item 12, executive session to receive legal advice from the town attorney on specific legal questions pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-4024B and to develop strategy for negotiations and or instruct negotiators pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-4024E, for which topic cannot be disclosed without compromising the purpose of the executive session. Do you have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Lasis, second by Mayor Pro Tem Pennington. We're all those in favor. Passage unanimous. We're in executive session.